Welcome in live to the Bitcoin Lobby afternoon edition. Myself, BTC Fiend. Chriso is up here with us, and some homies hanging out in the audience. And we're just having a conversation this afternoon and seeing what happens. We're just talking about camping and concerts, and not how they relate to Bitcoin, but I'm sure we could weave that into the conversation. But wouldn't that be interesting, though, if Ticketmaster started accepting Bitcoin and you could do those instant transactions where it was like a truly kind of first come, first serve. If there was like a way to pull it or something like that, you could have a little more instantaneous. And then they send you your ordinal, right, with the ticket stub.
I mean, it would be pretty seamless just to, pull up the tickets you want and just zap it right away and just be done with it instead of having to go through like 6,000 screens and whatnot.
Yeah, that's the convenience. I mean, that's the one thing I've learned, like being a Bitcoiner, is just like it's so much more convenient just to zap and move on. You don't have to, and then the transaction's taken care of. You don't have to worry about anyone stealing your identity along with it. It's just done. But opening up a world of new possibilities.
Someday.
New incentives, So
Sooner than later. I think
so you're hitting the road here soon. To go on your world tour? That's going to be a lot of fun, right?
Yeah, I'm leaving Friday. Immediately after work, I got a 10-hour drive down to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and then I'm spending a week in Tennessee doing a lot of nature stuff in Gatlinburg and Chattanooga, and then I'm hitting up 3 concerts at Caverns. It's called. It's the Cave in Tennessee. There's a band I really like called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard that are playing 4 shows. I can only go to the first 3, but Thursday through Saturday, I'm catching some shows inside of a cave, an actual cave. So that's pretty neat. And then I come home and I spend a day back home on Monday, that following Monday, and then I'm off to Denver and Red Rocks to see the band again for 3 more shows. Then I come back to Chicago after Red Rocks. I come back to Chicago and I get to see them 3 more times at a salt shed in Chicago, the old Morton's salt shed. So I'm seeing a grand total of 9 shows in a row, which I have not done. I did 10 shows in a row when I was in summer of 2000 for Fish. I just looked it up the other day. So wow. It would be the second most I've ever done, but obviously I don't have the same energy at 42 that I did when I was 19, I think.
Yeah. Now, do they like? Because I like Dave Matthews Band, and they're kind of a jam band type, and they the concert cultures align similarly, where they play they'll play 3 shows, but they'll be completely different sets. And,
yeah. No repeats the whole weekend.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
They announced that they've got 23 albums already after only 10 years. They put out an average of 2.3 albums a year. They got another one coming on the way in another month here. That'll be their first of the year. They have 2 coming out this year. They had 5 that they put out last year. So seven records in 2 years. They got plenty of material to pull from, and it's just kind of gotten to the point where they've started to realize that they've been getting a pretty big following. They're an Australian band, but they've realized that they've gotten a pretty big following here in the United States. Probably more so even than in Australia and in Europe, where they also tour pretty heavily. And so I think they've tried to kind of cater for the fact that people are traveling to see their concerts and don't want to see the same show night in and night out. So they really try to cater to the fans, and try to do things special for the fans either night. So yeah, it'll be fun.
That's cool. I mean, it's an immersive experience, and I think it's a lot of fun. I haven't been to, well, I guess I was just at a concert, but I haven't been to like a outdoor concert in a while. It's a different vibe.
Yeah, I'm itching to get back out. I always like the summer tours versus the fall tours, just because I kind of enjoy the environment, being able to see a concert in a cave and also at Red Rocks is just going to be way cooler than seeing it inside of a NBA arena or something, So
yeah, absolutely. And they've really gotten cool with like the visual effects too.
Yeah, that new Sphere at Madison Square Garden or in Las Vegas. Madison Square
Mm.
Garden Company put out a sphere that have you seen that? It's like that.
Huh. No.
It's like a 360 visual experience. U2 is kicking that off with a big long residency in Vegas, and
Oh
they
wow.
actually MSG is in negotiations now with Fish to also do a little residency run. I don't know if they're going to do something over New Year's or maybe later, but yeah, it sounds like they're going to try to bring in a lot of different bands, and they'll probably create some really cool unique visual experience on like this 360 LED screen that kind of encompasses the entire arena. And it's a big arena, it's 17,000 person arena, so this is not like some small tiny theater, you know. It's actually
Yeah.
a full stadium, so we'll see. I'm interested. As soon as they do announce the Fish, I'll be getting tickets for it and going. So
Nice.
whenever that is. So,
See.
anyways, enough of music. Should we talk about Bitcoin or Nostr? There's a lot been going
Yeah.
on.
Well, I see Mark's down there, and he put out. Yeah, here, let's bring you up to the stage. He put out
Oops.
a bounty out in OpenSats for a podcasting platform on
Hey, what's
Nostr
up?
to build
You able
on
to hear me?
Nostr, and he really mapped it out really well. So I don't know if you had a chance to read that, but welcome, Mark. Oh, he just
I
dropped
think
off.
he got hit in the matrix.
Yeah, it's the the classic. You ever see that South Park where they couldn't get the internet to work and they keep they're trying to figure it out, and it turns out you just gotta unplug it and plug it back in and reboot, and it starts right back up. It's
Speaking of technical issues, I think I don't know if you saw that. There's like some kind of I wouldn't know if it's a Nostr Nest competitor or whatever, but it's called Vita.live. Kind of a
oh
hybrid YouTube slash Zoom slash Twitter Spaces thing being built out through Lightning and Nostr. And so
no,
I think
I didn't see that, but I mean it's only
yeah,
a
you
matter
can
of time. That's why I think it's it like the first mover advantage for getting some sort of Zap functionality into the these type of applications is going to be huge.
if anything, it might light a fire under Semi to get him going here on
Yeah,
Nostr Nest. Yeah,
yeah,
check it out. It's Vita.live. I don't know.
Yeah, I checked
Haven't
it out today. I've checked it out today and I had a look. It was quite interesting. The way you sign in, you kind of like give your NPub and one of the relays that you hooked to, and they DM you an access link. So they have not implemented NIPO 7. So they have this other way of signing in, and then you can pretty much stream it either for free, or you can do like I can see OnlyFans kind of like content going there, because you can stream per minute, you can pay per minute, you can pay to contact, so you can pay per message, and you can also pay to dial in. So as a creator, you can decide what is free, what isn't, and what price people would have to pay for the different services, which is quite interesting.
And you can also split up from what I saw, you can split up the host revenue share. So if we had 4 hosts up here,
Yeah, I
you could
posted a
all.
note. I took the page, I took like a screen grab of the page. If you go on my profile, it's just like 3 notes down. So you got co-host earning splits, paid direct messages, private rooms, sponsored rooms, where you can actually have like an advertiser sponsor for the people to watch the content.
Oh, interesting.
Stream forwarding. Oh, so if you broadcast from Vida, you can actually send it to Twitter at the same time, Twitter and Facebook. You can
How does that work?
you can schedule events. There is a bit of customization in terms of what kind of layout people will see when they join your stream. It's interesting.
It's
Now,
Vita.live.
now, when you said the login, you don't have to give your NSEC, just your NPub and a relay to connect to.
Yeah, and then
That's it.
they send you a DM with a
Okay.
link. You click on the link, and that gives you access to the platform. So I'm not quite sure what happens when you log out. I'm just assuming you have to get like a new DM. There are other ways you can use, like an email. I think there are like
Yeah, I
better
saw
those
that.
ones. But in terms of using Nostr to access, that's the way. That's the way they set it up.
It's an interesting way to implement a login. Never really thought about that. I guess that would, as long as they kind of automate the DM process. Uh, sure, why not?
Yeah, that's a new world. Gotta make new rules and new products.
And I've seen somebody who was streaming. The quality was good. I'm not quite sure how it works in the back end in terms of technology.
So
You can.
it looks like you can sign up through phone, email, or Nostr. I'm looking at it now. It gives you
You,
3 options. So maybe that's why they don't use the NIP07, just to have that broader flexibility, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
hey, you just think you'd offer it as an option. I mean, it'd just be more direct, right? Instead of having to go through the hassle of a DM. But maybe it's just something they're gonna add at some point later down the line. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe it
Uh,
was faster for them. I heard some people that were saying that implementing O7 is not always the easiest thing. I don't
yeah.
know how
So
much is true.
if that's the case, maybe it's something on the roadmap that they haven't got to yet, and this is just kind of a temporary solution that works, right? But or maybe they just like it better this way. Who knows? I don't know. But other thing is you can record video as well. So if you guys did a podcast or did a stream, you could kind of record it the same way you would a YouTube live stream. So that's nice.
Yeah, I think, we've been talking about that. The more we can get more media integrated into, Nostr type applications, the better, because the real competition is going to be with TikTok and Instagram, and a lot of people are familiar with those type of products. And if you want to really drive more adoption, give more options and for people to use.
Oh, and the big here is direct monetization. Do you know, Gek, if they have take a direct cut? The platform takes some kind of percent cut from the tips or whatever you receive.
I have not looked into that.
Okay.
No, I just had a quick look at the interface and the basic functions.
I mean, yeah, even if they just took like a small, tiny, like few percentage points or something, even then would still be a lot better than what YouTube is
Yeah,
charging users.
55% is a pretty
Yeah,
high bar, or low bar, I should say.
I think that would be pretty easy for a competitor to beat. Um,
How many percentage YouTube?
It's like 55%.
Oh my gosh!
I know.
yeah,
I mean, you think about it. It's like
Because I
in
think
context, that's like kind of it's a horrible tax.
I was watching at music the other day, and I think iTunes is around 30%. Which, like, if you were to tell me, like, are you willing to give 30% away to the client at the relay? I'd probably say yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just crazy. I think it's going to be one of those things that's going to take the benefit of hindsight to say, wow, I can't believe we're giving that much away to just, be part of this brand, Apple or YouTube or whatever.
Spotify, it's they take even more. I think Tidal was the one who was taking less. It's kind of like owned by artists, so I kind of like understand. Not owned, but like a lot of artists jump on it.
I know a lot of people really seem to share a lot of title links on Nostr. Do you know anything more about it? All I've kind of heard about it is that you can stream high resolution audio files,
Yeah,
which
it's you can actually hear the difference. So I tried it for a month. I think it's very popular on Nostr because of Jack, who's one of the shareholders.
right.
So I
What
think
do you?
that because Jack owns is in Tidal, is part of Tidal. I think that was kind of like the popular way of sharing music on Nostr. But the quality, like you can really hear the difference. Like
Now, do you know?
I was trying the same song, Spotify, Apple Music, and Tidal sounded so much better. And some tracks you can actually have the master quality, but you need to pay stupid amounts per month.
Yeah, and you're also, I mean, so I'm an audiophile myself, so I can tell you that yeah, these streaming services are offering low bit rate MP3s to stream to you. And you
Yeah,
know,
well,
like if you have
with Tidal, I think you keep more of the integrity of your mix, and I think
yeah,
it's more forgiving at the mastering stage. So you need to less destroy it during mastering. You can keep the mix intact, and it
know what
really sounds well. It's just that like I was watching the price. I live in Switzerland, and it's double the amount that it costs in the United States.
I can imagine because the bandwidth that you would need to broadcast a 24-bit FLAC HD file, which is think about like this, like an MP3. If you were to download an album, let's say a low bit rate album of a MP3 quality, it'd be like maybe 60 to 80 megabytes typically you're running. If you got a 24-bit FLAC HD file, you're talking between 500 megabytes and a gigabyte. And so, I mean, I've even gotten like, full length concerts that run like 3 hours in length are well over like one or maybe over 2.5 gigs for a three hour concert. And so you gotta, yeah, I mean, it's going to cost you more because they're just going to be using a hell of a lot more of their servers to deliver that streaming. Now, that said, I also wouldn't recommend streaming 24-bit FLAC HD files over your phone unless you want to continue like completely murder your data usage on your phone.
Oh, I'm unlimited.
Oh yeah, well even the unlimited though. That's the issue. Is
I live in unlimited verse. Yeah, yeah. It's
I'm on quote unquote unlimited, and then that unlimited like gets throttled after 40 gigabytes. So it's like, okay, well, am I really unlimited if I get dropped down to like 1 G or whatever after 40
but
gigs of data? You know what I mean?
I've noticed now they gave me access to like they have all these Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the city, and a lot of the time I'm actually on one of their Wi-Fi hotspots. I'm not actually using mobile.
Yeah, that's nice too. If you can get that kind of like infrastructure built around with your
Yeah,
data
in the
service
city I
provider.
have it almost everywhere.
Nice. Yeah, I know if you're like in Chicago, if you're like a Comcast or Xfinity subscriber, which costs you an arm and a leg for their internet, but if you do have their internet at home, you also get the access to all their Wi-Fi, and they've really built out a huge Wi-Fi infrastructure around the Chicagoland area, and so you can pretty much, for the most part, find a Wi-Fi antenna anywhere you go within reasonable city limits. So yeah,
Which is
nice.
handy, but at the same time it's spooky because I'm
Oh,
constantly connecting to the hotspots and they know where I am and
yeah. Well,
What they want.
that's exactly
Triangulate your position.
right. That's exactly why they're doing it, right? It's more important to them to see where you're going and what data you're using, right? That's their gold mine.
yeah,
Data is a commodity.
it's a huge commodity. It's bigger than oil.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that was like the big thing that China was pushing. They called themselves, they wanted to be the Saudi Arabia of data, and all the data, basically channeled through their servers. And yeah, they have control over it and be able to predict, well, hell, if you look at like even like Google, I've kind of gotten away from Google applications just because of the centralization, which might not mean anything because it might, they might just be able to access it somewhere else. But like I know, like Google Maps, if you use that, like that's how they like predict where you're going on a certain day, 5 minutes to work or whatever it is, because they basically have that profile on you and know that Monday through Friday you walk out the door at this time and you head out to this place or whatever.
See, the thing with Apple is that I'm still on the maybe false assumption that because they got me kind of hooked on they give me all these services so that I keep buying hardware with them. So I understand the business model. They're like, I'll give you service, you keep buying hardware. So every now and then I'll buy a new computer, every now and then a new tablet, every now and then a new phone, exactly always with them. So I kind of feel like when they claim that they're treating my data with respect, I'm tempted to believe them, even though I know they have backdoors and all that kind of bullshit. With Google, I never give them money for anything. So when
Yeah,
they give me something for free, I'm kind of like, wait, dude, where is this coming from?
but their search even, I don't know. It seemed like it was getting crappier, and I just quit. Like when you Google search something, you get a prioritized index result, and it's different than like if you use DuckDuckGo or anything else.
What are
Um,
you using now? Because DuckDuckGo, I'm not satisfied with the result is fetching.
Yeah, neither am
uh,
I.
yeah, I was using DuckDuckGo. I've been kind of fading out from them a little bit, and I use Brave for this application, and then Safari periodically on my phone, and I guess on my laptop too.
I just don't like Bing. I know that's Microsoft, which is obviously still the devil, but don't they use AI for their search?
They started integrating like Chat GPT whatever somehow into their search engine, but I am not
Yeah.
familiar with it. I've used their like Bing image creator, which is like kind of like DALI add-on, bolt-on or whatever.
So I like I default use DuckDuckGo for search, but if I don't find what I need or what I'm looking for, like a lot of times I'll search the internet to kind of like look for like things I can chop up and put in a meme or something like that, right? And so I usually do like image searches of things, random things or whatever. And a lot of times, like, yeah, it seems like DuckDuckGo is pretty insuffice to what I'm trying to find a lot of times. And so then I'll go over to Google and see if I can find something. And it seems like I just get a broader display of things to kind of pluck from. Just personal opinion from experience, but I try to initially search through DuckDuckGo because I really would prefer to keep my search data private if I can. But again, if I'm not finding what I'm looking for, I've kind of got to branch off into other search providers. And it's not like I'm giving away the world being like looking for a dumb clip art from a meme or something, for a meme, you know what I mean?
It'd be nice just to
Everything
have.
is
Get,
every bit of data has
Jack.
value in terms of like psychological profiling.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, yeah, oftentimes they know you more than you better than you know you in a lot of cases. There's that skit they did on SNL. They're in a courtroom and they say, "Oh, to prove my client wasn't at this location, we're going to pull up his internet search history uh, and show you right here what he was searching for that day." And he says, "No, no, I'm guilty of the crime. Sorry." No, because he had to be there. It was funny.
You ever
Nobody
wonder
wants their full internet search history exposed without context.
do you ever wonder how you're being profiled? Like, what do they think about you? Like, I'd be like, Fiend, man, you're a fucking idiot. Like, this guy's a maniac. I don't know. Maybe we should stay away from this guy. He might be a threat to society, to national security or something.
Yeah,
No, not really. But you know what I mean. Like, I don't know.
yeah,
Oh, the feeling is mutual.
Exactly right. We think they're a threat to national security. They might think I'm a threat. What's the difference?
yeah,
It's all a matter of point of view.
yeah. I figure um, I don't do I'm not part of the whatever they're profiling. I mean, I'm a white guy, so that goes against me. I'm already on the bad list, but um, I don't know. Just strange times we're living in.
I think it's what gives me hope about this strange time that we're living in. And maybe it's the Nostr effect because I'm in contact with people. It's kind of like there is an awakening. I have a feeling that there are more and more people that became aware of how the system works and are fed up with it.
Yeah, I think it's right in line with a lot of things, that generational uh, turnover and that theory. I think we've been, like you said, selling our data for free, or giving our data away for free for the convenience. And I think people are realizing now that it's the pendulum swinging back, and we need to prioritize our privacy. And AI is only going to amplify that tenfold. And so I'm with you. I'm optimistic that there is a counter push to align more with privacy and individual rights and things like that.
And I think it's a feeling that has existed in the past, but the difference is that, let's say, on the monetary front, you have something like Bitcoin that can be a beacon of hope, of a new direction. When before you were seeing maybe the same phases and like, what else are you gonna do? There
Yeah,
was no other real option. And Nostr could play a similar role in communication, and kind of like the concept of the citadel is often presented, and Nostr becomes the citadel, and this citadel just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually with the hope of just covering the entire planet.
yeah,
All right.
it's an unstoppable force.
I think one of the biggest issues a lot of people have, when it comes to like protesting or even like some of the politicians that people follow is that, like disruption is one thing. And like, I'm all for disruption for sure. Like whether it's, protesting or, you know, politicians stirring up shit or whatever and trying to like dethrone the existing system. But it's like, you got to also come with a solution as well. And so it's like, obviously the monetary system, the historical monetary system, the fiat system has been a problem. But up until Bitcoin, we really didn't have a solution for it. And so it's nice that we have a weapon in our pocket when we do try to cause this disturbance or this disruption in the force to come to people with a logical, clear cut solution. And so,
Well, it's the same with Nostr in the social application. I mean, like I go back over to Twitter just to check the news every now and again, and it's just that the destructive network. They're just arguing over there, like on Bitcoin, quote unquote, Bitcoin Twitter. It was Udi and Greg Foss like getting in a space to argue about whatever, and I'm just thinking, here's these guys that are just like begging for attention, and they're making like these, it's like what Trump did. You make these outlandish statements just to get attention, and that's the incentive in
But it
Twitter, is to
right.
get attention by being radical and
but
making.
it's the key component of storytelling. Like the key component of storytelling is conflict of man versus man, man versus society, man versus nature, man versus himself. But we build story and we are attracted to story because of conflict. And I think that something in the algorithm of Twitter is aware of that, and conflict is rewarded.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it's not, I don't really have much issue with conflict. It's just like come to the conflict with a solution in your mind, right? Like and Seth was saying earlier, like about Trump, like he's the exact person I was thinking about when I was talking about politicians who are disruptors. Like it's cool that he's a disruptor and he's got like some anti-establishment ideas behind his rhetoric, but like if you doesn't really have a solution. I mean, dude's still a fucking fiat maxi. Like he doesn't have a solution. That guy printed more money during his 4 years than any other administration in the history of America. And so it's like, well, why would I want to get behind and support that, man? Now, clearly he doesn't have a solution that he's running under. He just wants to be a disruptor. And I
Who
yeah,
guess,
we
it
talking
serves
about?
its purpose, but like we also have, like, instead of destroying, we also have to think about building, right?
Who are
And so
we
it's like,
talking about?
oh, Trump, the president.
Oh, I'm not going there.
No, right. I mean, I don't like to go there either, right? But it's like he's the great disruptor, but he doesn't have a solution, right? And that's kind of thing is people.
Like honestly, when he got elected, I was like, give the guy a chance. I'm not. like I'm invested because whatever happens in the United States affects the rest of the planet. So we're all invested, but not as invested as an American. And for me, my reaction after first 2 or 3 weeks was like, why is he trying to alienate everybody? It seemed
Well,
like for me, from a like, if I had to break all the ties that America had and alienate everybody possibly, I would have done what Trump has done in the first 3 weeks he was in the presidency. It
Right. He
was
seems to.
like it was chaos, and it was like it looked intentional. It was mad for me from my point of view.
Right. A lot of it is divisive. It's destructive, and again, like ultimately underneath all that, I don't see any real solution. I don't see any. I didn't see any attempts in 4 years to actually provide a solution, and so it's like when he's running again, and it's like, well, I'm not going to get behind that, even though like I have friends that are like, dude, blah blah blah, It's like no, and I'll try maybe. I mean, I don't support any of these politicians. I think they're all fucking full of it and liars. But I guess the whole point was that being divisive and destructive and disruptive. It's like it's fine or whatever because that's just kind of human nature or whatever. But like if you don't have solutions underneath all of that and real solutions that
But
actually,
if you look at
it's just
Twitter,
like kind of pointless, right?
yeah, no, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But if you look at Twitter and who are the people that have a big voice on Twitter, most of them they wanted to have that position. Like they worked hard because it's not easy to create a following on Twitter, to have people listen to what they say, and all of that. So we're talking about attention-seeking people, and they're not necessarily the one that want to provide a solution. They just want the attention, and they understand that conflict will give them that.
yeah, no, that's what I was saying with Udi and Greg Foss. I think they're doing the same exact thing. They're using, on a smaller scale. They're doing it to gain people to either, conflict. It's producing energy, but disruptive energy, but trying to hone in that energy towards to rile up their base to some degree.
It kind of like it was interesting when there was kind of like the client wars between JB and Vitor, because we were coming from, at least for me, weeks of positive energy on Nostr. And suddenly there was this influx of tension and conflict with exactly the same behavior you just described, with people rallying on one side and the other and arguments starting. And I could feel like I got uncomfortable. I actually logged out. Other people I was in contact with were like, man, this is not what we wanted. And they kind of disappeared for a few days. So I don't think Nostr is immune to that kind of behavior. Because it had the same
No,
effect. Everybody focused. Like, that's one thing I'm afraid of, is like, is it going to become just like Twitter? Because
Well,
that's human nature.
I think the incentives are different. The incentives on Twitter are aligned for ego stimulation. Do this to give me more likes or more comments or more attention. Even the bad behavior. If you're sending something that's conflicting, then you're still getting attention. And if you're looking at attention as a commodity, then that's how you do it. Where on Nostr, I think that there's more value to your brand and your direct incentives to, and from a cultural standpoint, Noster's has a stronger position, for positive, constructive conversations rather than Twitter, where it's ego driven and more attention driven. I think that, and that's not quite as clean as and clear as cut, but it's directionally, I think, accurate, because you're going to get those people that have those learned behaviors from Twitter and trying to apply it to Nostr, I just don't think it sticks. People come in, they start bitching and complaining and doing weird stuff, then they get muted or moved out. It's like that, uh, main volume. That guy was. I think that's the only person I muted because he just kept commenting on everything and just get.
Is that a guy? I thought it was a bot.
We're all. It's still a mystery.
Yeah, we don't know. It's
No, I
weird either
thought,
way. It makes me uncomfortable, so I have him muted too.
but it's true that you can quite easily, because I think when you join Twitter, you're attracted to following the big accounts.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
you come, so you kind of like, you get hooked to that energy in a way or another. You get hooked to these energies and like people talking about trading and all that bullshit. And I think in Nostr, it's a matter, I agree with you, Seth, and I think it's a matter of us preserving the health of our network and just unfollowing when need be. And so that you don't even see that content anymore and you don't see that energy that maybe has repeated a bit too often over the last 3 days. You know what I mean?
I'd also add that, like, Bitcoiners aren't immune from that either. They've got their heroes, like the Sailors of the world and Jack Dorsey's of the world, right? And there's people that Bitcoiners will flock to, in mass when it comes to, like, following an account or commenting or replying on an account. But I think for the most part, kind of most of the ego-driven clout chasing types that are Bitcoiners are still over fighting with Udi and all the other shitcoiners and Vitaliks of the world and all those other scammers over on Twitter. Whereas kind of Nostr still kind of stayed its own little niche of builders and the hopefuls and the optimists and the pioneer types of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And so for now, it's great. But again, like, does the kind of, I don't know, quote unquote mind virus kind of move over once the water gets warm enough for people to kind of jump over to Nostr and the incentives get too great to ignore? And it's
Maybe,
kind of, you know what I mean? I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
maybe.
maybe
So
it's
this
the
is all
same.
just a big experiment, just like Bitcoin. Nostr is just one huge experiment that we're going to look back here in 10 years if we're still, here and Nostr is being used and it's still being built out and just going to just have this massive ecosystem of tons of features and tons of apps and tons of development and tons of users. And we're just, we could be like, man, I was there back in January 2023 or December 2022. And man, it was like this cool vibe and Pura Vida type knit community. And it was great. And now look what it's become or whatever. And it's like, I mean, no. We have no idea where this experiment's going to go. And to me, I mean, that's kind of cool. Like, it's fascinating, the uncertainty. I mean, I'm not saying it would be cool if it turned all like negative and clout chasey like Twitter or whatever, but it's just kind of cool that we're early to something and we can kind of watch this thing grow. And
All these points that both of you are making me think that Nostr shouldn't grow too quickly.
Oh, I completely agree. That
That it should,
it's grow slow and make it resilient. I think that was
yeah.
a Satoshi quote as well, talking about Bitcoin. Is you don't want it to grow too fast because you'll lose your resilience. And I think in line with like technology adoption, think about the radio, how it was used as for propaganda purposes when it was first really rolled out. And I think that it was very much the same with Twitter. I think it got used in propagandist type of ways to really drive social unrest. But what comes after it is like a better system. It's the same type of approach. It's a social media type of platform, but now the incentives are completely different. The Nostr's, as far as I can tell, is the first one that really changed the way the incentives work. All the others are, feed the advertising algorithm to feed you, to buy shit you don't need. And so that's why that worked that way. But now we have a completely redesigned platform, or if you want to call it that, a protocol that allows you to have a different incentive system.
You talk about the game of incentives or the incentives, and I think that's the big difference between Bitcoin and Nostr. with Bitcoin in the white paper, the incentives were clear. Like it's clearly stated what the incentives will be to participate in the network. Not really with Nostr. With Nostr, we have this cool technology, but the incentives of running a relay, the incentives of building for Nostr are not quite clear yet.
Yeah, well, especially from like a, if you're trying to build a company or build a brand on Nostr, it's very much undefined. I mean, we're doing these Bitcoin lobby things, and for one, they're fun. But if this were, turn this into like a serious program, which it is, but more professionally produced and all those things, then there's got to be a means uh, to make money off of it, or a reason to keep coming
Yeah.
back, and maybe that zaps in the for the people on the stage, or, they're I think it, and that adds to the conversation, being able to have that incentive in place for people to want to participate.
That's why I'm quite curious of what's happening at Stemster, because there is the need of, basically the question is, how can we monetize all these different creators? So you have the loop maker, and you have the producer, and you have the artist, and you have these people, and how can you collaborate in a way that when you package it and sell it, well, everybody gets its share of the action? I don't know what's happening. I know that they're rebuilding everything. I know that Pablo has helped them, because I've seen that Rock is thanking him.
Can you explain, because we're recording the sessions, can you explain, what
Oh,
Stemster
sorry.
is, and also kind of what cool features? Because
Okay,
it's
so
a music streaming service,
it's a
right?
music
Like
it's a
Zapster.
music streaming. It's not streaming. Zapster is the music streaming.
Okay.
So that's for the streaming. Stemster is still trying to understand exactly what it's going to be. But basically it became, and it looks like it's going to be a hub of collaboration for making music.
Yeah, it's like it takes like music sampling, like beats and
And all of that.
yeah.
And the idea is to be able to track the collaboration of all the people that contributed to making a music.
So
So if I use,
we're talking like some global open source music creation tool where people can contribute to a song all around the world. Um,
yeah, and some kind, like the way he wanted to pitch it was the GitHub of a track. It
yeah,
was
dude,
kind of like
that's brilliant, dude. Shit,
that
nice.
was rock ways of explaining the concept. But then there are all these opportunities for monetizations that kind of popped in. So I'm curious to see exactly what they're building. I know that they're rebuilding everything that they had, which is already nice. Like if you, let's say a producer drops a track, then somebody takes it, replies to that track with an added guitar riff and maybe some synth. Then somebody else takes it and puts some lyrics on it. And basically you get a tree, and you can visualize the tree with all the different collaborators when you click in the interface. So that was quite cool.
That was absolutely amazing. Like if this experiment works, like this is actually something I have kind of thought about, not in this exact way, but just kind of how the world could possibly collaborate together. If you were sitting in Afghanistan or something like that, and you had some kind of internet connection, you could drop a sample over to someone who's maybe a complete stranger who's over in the United States or in Switzerland or whatever, and contribute music together. And I know it's kind of like been done to various degrees or whatever, but to have some kind of GitHub like for music, that to me is like kind of taking it next level.
Yeah,
Wow,
and
amazing.
instead of having everything hidden behind a paywall, and you say you need to pay for the sample, you need to pay for this, you need to pay for that, you can just say, well, you ideally, that's my dream. You can get a percentage of the track.
Right. Yeah, it's a kind of a low risk, right? Like for the person who's kind of started the project or whatever. Because if you got to dish out, $20,000 just to get all these contributions, and you only sell like $5,000 worth of songs, then you pretty much put yourself at a loss of $15,000. Right,
And
right at the
and
start. It's
so
kind of like like movies, right? Like the same way Hollywood operates.
exactly.
They put a ton of money up front, and they just hope and pray that the ticket sales justify the expenses that they put towards creating the movie. And so,
But you
yeah,
talk
if you offer,
movies. You talk movies, which is a very good example, because in the low budget, when you're struggling for cash and it's difficult to find the funding, in the low budget movie making, usually what you do is that you attract the creative by giving them percentages of the movie.
right,
So I
exactly.
think you can recreate the same thing via some kind of like protocol based copyright management, and you get rid of accountants, lawyers, and all these people who leech a stupid amount of money on the entire chain of production and distribution.
Right, because the percentage is handed out as trustless, right? You don't have to be like, I'm getting screwed because they're not paying me. It's all just kind of automatically diverted into your Lightning wallet.
Yeah, and the way I would set it up is, well, let's give a percentage to the relays for hosting the music, some specialized music relays, for example.
Right, then every
If
single person in this project is taking a risk, right? Or like a labor risk, I guess, maybe not a financial risk, unless they're trying to justify the cost of paying for their equipment, or the relays are paying for the cost of the server usage, right? But everyone's kind of
yeah,
taking their own calculated risk on their own end, and no single entity is kind of taking the full responsibility or the full risk on their end.
no, but at this stage, when we're uploading media, we're not using Nostr. So for me, in my mind, is that there is that layer of problematic that is media hosting. And when I think media hosting, I think all the way to video hosting in terms of the kind of server that you need behind to be able to dish this content. And it would be interesting to find a way to build it in Nostr, where we're not giving our media to Amazon, and then people use Nostr to consume it. It would be
Well,
nice to have. It would be nice to have a special class of relays.
this kind of ties back to kind of your original point you brought up with the JB and the Vitor argument, right? Because Vitor wanted to support what was it, NIP 95, I believe, that where the relays would actually host people's data, and so but that was kind of like forced upon the relays, instead of
But I
like
think it wasn't. It
permission.
wasn't. It wasn't even NIP 95 that was really the problem. I think it started with NIP 94.
94, 90, yeah, 94/95. Yeah, I gotta lump them together, I
No,
guess, even though.
they're quite different. They're quite
Yeah,
different.
right, exactly.
94 was invented initially, or was thought initially to be for file sharing, and then after the incident, let's say, they changed the definition of what the NIP should do, and they say, well, it should not be used in a social client. So they imagine this NIP to be able to exchange files with special built clients to do so, if you want. Okay. He implemented it to add like a hash when you post a picture. And that hash would be used to verify that the picture is really the one that was linked. So if somebody was to change the media that is hidden behind the link, Nostr would understand that and block it, which is a very rare occurrence. So I think the clash became really from 94. In terms of 95, I'm really interested in 95, but I think there is like one relay who runs it at the moment, and that's it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, Enki, who's down in the audience, has a radio type application. I'd be interested if you can free to talk, come up and bring you up to the stage if you want to talk about that. little bit would be interested to learn about it.
All right, had to plug in my mic. So what do you want to hear about it?
Well, just trying to build out media applications and the different files, and really how do you go about building audio distribution on Nostr?
I'm kind of hacking a bunch of crap together because I'm not really a coder or like that great at coding yet. So kind of what I did was I just built a simple HTML website, and I have on the same server, I have a locally running Nostr chat that's embedded into the site with an LN bits instance that's also acting as like kind of a tipping wallet on the page. And the idea behind the radio station was to give every DJ or radio person and the radio is just an icecast stream. So yeah, it's kind of like a bunch of pieces knit together, and the idea was to give every DJ that wanted to kind of join on their own web page that would have a link to their own like Nostr chat room, and then set up either like an LN Bits tipping wallet, or if they already had an LN URL, I could add that into the site so someone could click and tip them or whatever while they're doing their show. Yeah, I'm also doing other stuff like adding like archives for downloading. If someone did a set they really like, they can put it up for download and either for free or get tipped for it or something if they want. That's yeah, I don't know, but like I really like Nostr Nests, but it's good for talking, but you can't stream live audio to it. So like yeah, that was kind of what I was trying to do. That's really all it is right now.
Well, that's all. I mean, hey, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, right? And I think it's just important to highlight some folks like yourself that are like building, despite not having the deep code background. You're putting that first step out there and putting something together, and I think that there's a lot to be learned from that and applied elsewhere. Because
I was just going to say I am an experienced systems administrator. That was my day job up until recently. So like I have a pretty heavy tech background. I just for some reason never got into coding, and I do a lot of web development. So,
but I think one of the beauty of Nostr is that when you build a solution, it doesn't have to be, at least for now, 100% Nostr based. And even like something like Twitter could integrate part of Nostr if they wanted to. I'd be happy if a lot of the services I use would even just allow me to sign in with Nostr. Just integrate Nepo 7, nothing else. I'm happy. It's already one step. So it's kind of like you take what you can from Nostr, and I think to find platforms, to build platforms like what you're doing, where you give a solution that integrates with Lightning, with Nostr, and that uses whatever technology you have available to make it work is exactly what we need.
I think it's kind of similar to the way that the Bitcoin uses too. Like we're not going to just completely flip the world over to a Bitcoin standard, right? It's just going to be kind of slowly. Businesses are just going to continue to add little features of Bitcoin. And, like things like the Lightning login and all these kinds of other small features or whatever. And I think that's going to be the same way that Nostr kind of infiltrates in, like you said, just have a website that implements NIP7 to be able to log into their site. And then you kind of just, rely on some kind of like Enki was saying, kind of like little hacky workarounds for things, for the time being. And then eventually over time, things will continue to gravitate more and more and incorporate Nostr into the internet and into the overall kind of ecosystem.
Well, good ideas are built upon other good ideas. The Wright brothers weren't the ones who invented the ability to fly. They just built upon what other people did, and until they sort of got it right. And I think that's rings true with a lot of stuff being built out on Nostr. I can't see the world sort of, I know, like, I read the 0 to 1 book, the Peter Thiel book, talks about like how, you really need to have a monopoly over everything. But I think the world's changing and getting a little more distributed, where people are going to go to their niche type of application and use it. So, you're going to have a couple thousand users here, a couple thousand users here, versus, what today it is, there's billion users on Facebook or whatever, or TikTok. So people are going to kind of, build out community that way in a more distributed means versus, all go to that one centralized application. And we've seen the limits that has, and how that can backfire on individuals and groups of people as well.
I think the web already offered, just close this, the web already offered a good chance for growth for niche markets. Like, I have some students, I used to teach video making and filmmaking, and I have some students who specialize in watches. And I was like, you're doing advertisement? And I was like, no, we're doing just shows about watches. And it's like, where are you selling them? Well, there is this specialized watches channel that you can sell content to. And they earn a good living. And basically, every now and then they do adverts and things like that to make a better buck. But they already had this niche kind of like possibility of saying, well, people that really want to watch content about watches, we can create content for them, and we can find them, and we can get paid for it. The problem is that all the infrastructure on which this is happening is centralized. That the search engine that people use it to find it is centralized. And I think that's the big difference with Nostr. And I think that's why this game of relays and how these relays will talk to each other and how we're going to segment it via relays is the interesting part. And I love the fact that it hasn't been figured out yet. Everybody's building their solution on their side, and you have competing ideas that try to solve the same problems, and you have big platforms that think differently. And I think this is perfect. This is the perfect conditions to actually get to the good stuff, where we will naturally just gravitate towards it.
Well, I think, going back to the whole Stemster idea is like, if you do have this content or whatever, and you do need to host it, you can go to a relay service, and, you don't have to just go to a YouTube that's going to be like, okay, 55%. You can go to probably thousands of relays or tens of thousands of relays that are going to spread up around the world and be like, hey, what percentage would you be willing to take to host this content? And, you could kind of like pitch it out to the lowest bidder, and you could get a much better rate, a cut or a lower percent that they're going to take for that cut.
That
works in the user's favor, right? Versus where YouTube just like 55%, take it or leave it,
I am basically just waiting to understand how it's going to work. If it's going to be NIP 95, if it's going to be something else, so that I can set up a specialized relays for French hip-hop music and nothing else. And that's my aim, I'm just waiting to try to understand, what do I need to do? What kind of relay do I need to set up? What kind of local service can I use to actually run it? So that I can stream music. And that's the part of Nostr that interests me the most. It's the relay business for media.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm curious. I could envision, people trying or wanting to host their own, host their own relays. I don't know what that would entail, but imagine, if you have somewhere where you host, you control, like what Hillary Clinton did with her emails, right? You have a server that you control to host your own relay for images or for media or something like that. That way you're not subject to, that's an individual creator. You own the content the whole way around, right?
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think as a relay, you need to, especially if you want to go towards media, you need to be starting in a way where you can scale up. And that is that if more and more people want to access your content at the same time, well, you need to be able to increase the bandwidth accordingly.
but
And
like you said, if you're in kind of a niche community like French hip hop or whatever, and maybe you don't expect more than a couple 100,000 downloads or listens or streams or whatever, you can probably get away with not having to run some massive AWS style server farm, right?
the game I'm playing, we're trying to understand it, is what's the lowest I can start with, and how can I scale up if need be, so that you can kind of like, you get close to that maximum and you say, okay, now it's time to scale up, and you actually had enough time to do it before you reach that maximum bandwidth, whatever it was that you first started with.
Like,
And so I think
can
like exactly the way that you're talking, like how to like start small and then eventually building and scaling up or whatever, is exactly kind of how like Bitcoin operates too, where it's like the people who need it the most in the global south are the people who are kind of using it first, as it kind of stays small or whatever, and then at some point like the incentives just continue to scale up and up and up, and then you get
Yeah,
more
and I'm
mainstream adoption later on. But at the start, kind of things are just kind of growing organically and started small and kind of just slowly spread like a virus, right? And I think that's kind of how Nostr, you're going to see the same trajectory for Nostr too,
yeah.
where it starts with niche communities, like the French hip hop scene and whatnot, and you might not need a lot of bandwidth because you're kind of starting out small, and maybe to start you only got like 10 to 15 users. Whatever. I mean, I don't know, how far your reach is. If you're kind of a big deal in the community or whatever, maybe you start off with 100,000. I mean, I don't know, but
I-
depends kind of
I'm
where.
I'm
where
I'm not a big deal, but let's say that I have the right connections. So my intention is to be able to have the system to understand the deal that I can give to the artist or to the label, and then to say, well, this is the deal I give you. It's a better deal than whatever they're going to give you in iTunes and all these people, and it pays in Bitcoin straight to your wallet. And once I can have that, that is that once I have a system that says, okay, then I have a few people in mind that I want to be able to kind of like bring to the relays, to then bring the listeners, because you need to have at least one or two people that are already have some following.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, totally. And you know, I think it's one of those things is people will come and you just got to show them, where they're going to make more money and save money, based on their existing services that they're using. And I think, that's kind of how we're all going to scale Nostr, right? Is get people with bigger followings and bigger clout or whatever to see that, if you just moved your streaming service, your YouTube program over to some kind of Nostr service, that you're not going to have to pay YouTube 55%. And at some point, people are just going to use simple logic and be like, duh, okay, yeah, good idea. I got the
No,
followers regardless, right? Like, people are going to tune into me. Like, you think if Joe Rogan moved to Nostr, that all of a sudden, like, maybe his viewership dips a little bit, but you think it's going to dip to zero? Like, no, like, maybe instead of getting 15 million views, he might start at 11 when he makes the transition, but he'll get back up to where his user
and
base needs to be because they want to tune into his content, right?
with a bit of game theory, let's say, I think we can build a distribution model that offers a better deal to everyone involved, from the listener to the advertiser, if the advertiser comes in, to the artist. Because there are so many leeches, and I think this applies to so many other industries, not only publishing. There's so many people that just leech, and we talk about value for value. And I think if we just stick to the value for value and we remove all these other elements from the chains of distribution, then we get a better deal for everyone. Music costs less and the artist gets more.
Yeah, and if you're a producer, that seems like that would be a pretty easy sell to be like, hey, I can give you, if you're Spotify, you get 5% of the royalties or 2% or whatever. I don't even know what it is. I'm sure it's insanely low. But here you get 93% or whatever, and we dish out the other 7% to like the relay operator and maybe the production crew or whatever.
I think Spotify right now is between 0.003.
Right.
Donc,
So it's stupid low, right?
0.003 cents per stream and 0.005, and iTunes is a bit higher than that.
Spotify is so fucked. I removed all my music off of it because of that.
Because of the lack of fees, I guess, or the lack of
I mean, granted, I'm small potatoes. I'm not going to be getting a shitload of streams anyways. But like, I can't support Spotify.
Well, that was it. I listened to a podcast with their CEO, and he talked about, because really it was like, if you think of the broader evolution of this, it was the music labels that owned everything, right? And they had a complete monopoly. And then, the Napster years came, and then Apple came in and with their, iTunes store and simplified that model. But then because really they kind of went back to, the rights of the music were never to the artists, they were directly to the labels. They basically made they made a sacrifice or whatever, and made this agreement, which is not very favorable for the artist. I mean, obviously, if you're Taylor Swift or something, you might be able to hammer a bigger check, but generally, yeah, it's pretty cheap for the artist. But like, these applications are so huge for going direct. It's just right now you don't have the brand recognition like Spotify or something like that.
Music industry has always been massively oppressive. And so I think it's an easy sell when you say, would you like 0.003 cents per stream song of your song, or would you like
I think
0.9 tenths of a penny, right? And then just dish out the other tenth of a penny to the relay operator and the production team or whatever, or any of the contributors. It just seems like a no-brainer.
I think one of the biggest problems that the music industry has faced was compact discs. Yeah. Because basically what happened with compact discs is they had a medium that was cheaper to manufacture. They re-released music that they already owned. They didn't have to pay for the new production or anything like that. And they sold it at a higher cost than what a cassette used to cost. So they got used to making stupid amount of money. And when all of that kind of like stopped with Napster, and all the other options that came, the hunger that they had wasn't gone. So when they built the new system, they were still like, well, I want to continue to make that amount of money that I was making before.
Yeah, that goes back to incentives, and especially when you have that, that cash cow that just generates money over and over, and they're going to be super protective of it, and that's when they get into fighting you in the legal system and things like that.
And speaking, since we're on the topic of music, Tina Turner just died.
Oh yeah,
80 years old. Yep. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. I wouldn't even. She had the song "What's Love Have to Do with It," right? That was her big hit.
I think she was best known for having the best legs in the music business.
Yeah, I saw that come across, but y'all were all in-depth conversations about other important matters, so I didn't bring it up.
Hey, this is important, man. Tina Turner died, man. It's important. Come on. It's important. Chime in there.
Well, y'all talking about the future. She's the past now, so.
Hey, her music lives on. It's recorded, so it lives on forever.
Oh, you're right. You're right. She was good now. I enjoyed her music.
Yeah, she was in the 80s, early 80s, really made her brand. And I know she had her husband was an abuser or something. There was some issue there, I remember.
Yeah, and wasn't she married to James Brown?
Oh, was she?
Ike Turner, I think it was the abuser.
No, that's right. I'm sorry.
James Brown, also a great musician and also an abuser, but not the one who beat up Tina Turner, as far as I know.
You can tell I know a lot about music. I just listen to it.
I will say my favorite Tina Turner performance was her performance in Mad Max Thunderdome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was good.
Well, may she rest in peace. But they don't make music like they used to. But that's probably me just being old.
No, they don't make music like they used to. But they don't make anything like they used to.
Well, everything's like a small sound clip now, and it's all, where old albums used to be like whole stories, think about like, The Dark Side of the Moon. There's a whole story in that whole album. And, same with, gosh, there's so many of them. Like, you collected the album for the whole ensemble, the music, and they all went together. And now it's just, it got incrementally smaller, whereas tracks and they didn't interconnect through story, and now they're just small TikTok sound bites, and so it's getting smaller and shorter. They don't. What's the last great ballad song?
I was going to say, I don't know how much electronic music you listen to, but there's a small trend of electronic artists that are doing more like more cohesive albums.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like lots of psytrance and some bass music artists. They're doing some of them have been doing like conceptual albums where they try to tell a story throughout the entire album.
And in hip hop as well, in French hip hop, quite a lot. And there is kind of like this difference between the mixtape, which is kind of like what you describe, and the album. The album tend to be a bit more conceptual. But I've noticed like a huge change in the structure of the song.
That's interesting. I didn't realize there was a resurgence on that, because that's one thing I've growing up I always appreciated about a lot of the music was the the completeness of the whole album, and the how it followed a story and there was alignment there.
I listen to a lot of text-based music, so it's like I've always gravitated towards that music. So maybe it's just me. I've stayed in touch with that music.
I would say
people that tell stories.
Yeah.
The band that I'm going to see next week, King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard, they've put out 23 albums in 10 years, and over half of them are concept albums. Like all different kinds of cool concepts too. Like they're really, really creative and inventive with like their concepts that they're creating for these.
You were talking about Fish earlier on.
I was Fish, yeah. I mean, yeah, they put out a concept album. Rift was one of their early albums back in '93, I think. That's a concept album. It's about a man going through his different phases of sleep cycle. It's pretty neat.
I did the lighting for them once when I was younger.
Really?
It was insane. Yeah, here in Switzerland.
Really? When they were overseas? Yeah, because I know I just read an article that when they were in overseas in either 97 or 98, I think it was 98, they rented out a lot of their equipment to vendors in Europe instead of bringing it all over on the boat with them from America. Interesting.
Yeah, no, I used to work in this concert place, and basically they would come, like we would receive the setups in advance. They would arrive, they already had the setup, and we use our equipment to set it up. And
cool.
Some bands will come like some things that were higher caliber would come with full-fledged shows that were like driven with their own equipment, and that was just a matter of helping them setting it up. But no, working with them was fun, and I couldn't understand, like my English was really bad back then, and even if my English was good, I wouldn't have understood a word of what the guy was telling me. Really thick accent, and it was a tiny concert place, like 400 people maximum. It was packed. It was insane.
Yeah, I think they probably most of them were probably Americans that came over along with them, considering their following here in the United. I mean, they're huge in the United States. Like they sell out big amphitheaters. Like they're one of the biggest touring bands like in America. Like full stop. But yeah, I think what happened was in '97 they came over and they brought all their equipment. And I think they lost their ass on the deal, and they wanted to play small venues to kind of like reconnect and like as a band and kind of just all be able to hear each other, because they were starting to get really big and play big venues. And then I think in '98 they decided just to kind of sublet out a lot of their equipment costs and instruments and all that other stuff to European vendors in order to save that travel expense. And so I think that their second go around in '98, which is probably when I can't quote you, but it's probably when you're
around that long.
They've been around since 1983. This is their 40th anniversary this year.
Are you talking?
It was definitely like I worked with them late '90s.
Yeah.
Are you talking Fish or the
Fish? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking King Gizzard, Lizard
Yeah,
Wizard.
this year's their 40th anniversary coming up in December, early December. I think the 3rd of December or 2nd, one of the two. I think is their 40th anniversary of their first concert.
How did they align with the Grateful Dead? Because I mean, I remember like Grateful Dead, and they were doing the tours, and then like Jerry Garcia died, and then like Fish just came on the scene. Like they just kind of picked up where the Dead had kind of left off. I mean, is there like, did they open for them or?
No, it's just like, so it kind of works out. There's like a circuit, like a touring circuit. And so like when the biggest act is out in tour, which back then was the Dead and now it's Fish, but like back then, like when the Dead would tour and they'd go to a city, all these kind of smaller bands would kind of play the smaller venues around the city around that time. So they kind of catch the overflow, or they'd kind of catch the late night party after the main show, the Grateful Dead show. And so I think Fish kind of, in a lot of bands like Widespread Panic and some of the smaller bands before, they were kind of growing under the Grateful Dead's wing. We're doing that kind of stuff. And then kind of once Jerry died, the Grateful Dead kind of disbanded. Like they did form another band, but it took them like 3 years to form a band called the other one. So there was kind of like this gap between 95 and 98 where like a band was allowed to kind of step in on the forefront and kind of take over the main culture, I guess you want to call it, because like the jam band scene is like a pretty huge scene of its own. And so now, Fish, they started playing like Madison Square Garden, the Boston Garden, and some of these bigger like NBA-sized arenas after Jerry died, and they kind of just took over the throne, I guess. And so nowadays, like Fish is the band that tours around, and then all these other bands kind of chase them around the country, and we'll do like the smaller theater venues and the after parties and those kind of like the late night shows and that kind of stuff while they're in town. So it's kind of how that dynamic works. But I
was just going to say, Surviving Dead members are now doing that whole Further thing.
Yeah, they're doing Dead and Company, so this is actually their final tour.
Okay. They've had 3 final tours, though.
Well, I mean, they're also, it's all marketing, right? Like Aerosmith's on their final tour right now, and you never know. It's one of those things. It's like if there's money to be made with the bands that are this big, they're going to try to like drip every last penny out of you.
I grew up around Deadheads, so I always like poking fun of them.
What's that? You grew up what?
Oh, I was just to say I grew up around Deadheads, so I just like poking fun at jam band enthusiasts.
Oh yeah, I mean, each its own. I like it, but I also like electronic, like the music you guys are into too, like the electronic music.
No, I listen to everything. I'm not trying to say I don't like the music. It's just the whole. It's just weird because when I was like kind of learning about Fish and the Dead, it's just there's like this weird beef between Fish fans and Deadheads. I don't know if that's still like relevant, but that was the kind of the culture I grew up around in. So it's just I don't know, just interesting. I didn't really pay attention to it because I didn't really, I guess, care all that much about the like group differences, but.
Yeah, I think more so Fish fans are probably more Deadheads than Deadheads were Fish fans. I think the Deadheads kind of either just stopped touring altogether, maybe because they were getting older, or just maybe went to like some of the side project stuff from some of the Dead members. But yeah. I think I'm both. I'm a big fan of both bands, and so it's one of those things. Like I don't see any hostility personally. I don't have any hostility. I think they're both great. They're totally different, and why the hell would I only listen to one of them? They're both great bands.
Yeah, it's just a weird cultural thing that I noticed when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I don't care. If it's good music, I'll listen to it.
A lot of it's just ego based, right? Like, man, I was around in the 70s, man. You don't know shit, you young punk. It's like
that's usually what the arguments were. It was like, oh, I've been to like 30 Dead shows, and I'm blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, shut up, hippie. No one cares.
It's useless ego. Like, yeah, you just gotta sift out the noise. So everything else, it's like we're talking about Twitter too. It's the same deal with Twitter, right? Like a lot of noise. You got to try to find the signal amongst the noise. That's kind of been my goal and my focus. Like one of Michael Saylor's big 10 tips for people is focus your time. And so that's what I've been trying to do. When navigating the social media realm, is just kind of sift out the Greg Foss and the Udi fights and conversations, and just try to focus on what people are building, what cool things are being done on both Nostr and Bitcoin. So that's just kind of where my head's at lately.
All signal. Chasing that signal, not the noise.
We're trying.
Yeah, it's easy to get distracted by the shiny objects. But I'm like you. I think having gone through the last 5 years or whatever on social media sites, and with all the political upheaval and all that shit, it like start to just see through the things and see what it really is, and you understand that there's really no authenticity. It's just really people are doing it for clicks and likes and driving attention.
Seth, was it you that said that they went on Zapped It? Zapddit, or was it someone else we had on the show last Thursday?
It wasn't me. I haven't been on
Okay.
it.
I think this is
We
a
were talking
went
about
on
this.
Reddit alternative.
I
Jack,
went on Adapted. Yeah. I think it was me maybe last week.
Yeah, I think so.
How is it?
Yeah, I'm struggling because his development is not friendly to iOS browsers at the moment. So the browsers I'm using are not giving me the full experience. He's working on it. I still have not. I don't really like his down zaps. So his down zaps, pretty much when you down zap, you decide which address you send the zap to. So I can zapstabate. I can become an angry zapstabator who could just set up a second address and just send zaps to myself every time I downvote. Also, at the moment, there is no algorithm. So basically, you still have the reverse chronological order of the nodes. It's just that next to the nodes, you would have the amount of up zaps and the amount of down zaps. I mean, the up zap, we have it already. It's called a zap.
Right.
The down zap, the way it's implemented, I don't understand the use of it.
Well,
you really hate something, right? Like you really hate a post, right? I guess is this kind of how that Reddit.
I personally want an algorithm that I can control to some extent. But also, I'm always curious. I love going to Reddit and look at controversial posts where there is that healthy balance between up and down, and a lot of people have contributed, but it's controversial. So I think I like to have that information. Zapted doesn't give it to you. There is no way of using the zaps to actually drive an algorithm. Also, I think what I would like to do with the down zaps is to be able to, every time I down zap, load a budget, and then maybe once a week or once a month, that budget gets redistributed to all the stuff that I up zapped. Or something like that, in a way that I don't really control. Yeah, I could still control.
It feels weird to me to not like something and feed that monetarily. Does that make sense?
Well, you're trying to get your anger out at it.
Yeah, but you're actually just still contributing to that person.
Yeah.
And then you send it to another address, but it's always the same address. So basically, I need to set up an address, and every time I down zap, the zap goes to this address that I've set up, which I don't understand.
So you're just zapping yourself?
I could. That's why I was talking about angry zapstabation.
But don't you? What isn't the point of the down zap to down zap the user or the author of the note that you don't like?
I think he's playing with the ideas. I think if you want to look at something that is more curated, you go and look at Satellite, at what he's building at satellite.earth.
Oh, that's Stuart Bowman's? This is Stuart Bowman's site?
Yeah.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Because there is an algorithm, and I don't understand how it works, and it doesn't reply to the notes on Nostr, so I can't tell you much more.
Yeah, he was trying to build out a Reddit type of Reddit similar, in design with satellite.earth.
The two-panel view is really nice. So if you wanna browse two-panel view on web, I do it on Nostr, NOSUR at the end on iOS. If you do it on iPad, you get the second panel, and it's really handy when you're trying to understand what's happening on a thread, or when you're browsing comments. You browse in comments, you see a comments that intrigue you, you click on it, and you see the full thread on the side, and it's a nice way of navigating. I like it.
So I'm confused here. So he's because satellite.earth, we had a nice long conversation with Stuart. You can click up on our link above where you can visit the Bitcoin Lobby podcast channels if you guys are interested. Fascinating conversation with him. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. But anyways, he was talking about using satellite Earth as kind of the Reddit alternative, but now he's taken that idea over to Zapdit. This is
No, I
I'm saying that Zapdit, in my opinion, in the way it's implemented at the moment, doesn't really offer anything. The main thing it offers you is that you can search using a tag. And you can save these tags and you can create a feed with multiple tags. So that's the cool thing for me with Zapdit. In terms of the zapping mechanism, the up zap and the down zap, it doesn't add anything.
Yeah, like Reddit has the functionality where it'll rank it, like you move up or move down with the up and down zap.
Right.
Or this is just you're just zapping with no outcome. It just displays
a little flag next to the note. That's it.
Yeah.
And I liked the original idea of Reddit, which was I've read something, I post the link, and then the people that use the site will generate a ranking. And I think what Nostr can add is that this ranking, I could control whether it's global, whether it's my tribe, whether it's the people I follow, whether it's my entire network, whether it's the recommendation of a list. And I think that's where the idea of Reddit becomes interesting with Nostr, is to give me more customization on how I interact with the algorithm. That's what I would like to have. So Zapdit doesn't seem to do it. When I mentioned it to him, it's my intention to continue as is for now. That's kind of like the reply that I had. When on satellite, he seems more interested in creating kind of like a curated experience. But it might not be what I want either, because he's talking about moderating the moderators. I want to be able to control the algorithm and give power to the people I follow and to my lists to control the algorithm for me.
interesting. I had a thought earlier today about the idea of ratios on Twitter. How do you do that if you're an only Zaps person who doesn't want to use the like button for stuff? I mean, it seems like a kind of a culturally important feature to have when someone is maybe being nefarious or is a bad actor and trying to share a narrative, to have the community be able to kind of fight back on that narrative with a ratio. I don't think we can do that with just using Zaps, right? Because like there's like a nefarious actor that's well funded, and you posted a nefarious note, and that person wanted to kind of like boost the influence of that nefarious note that you posted. They could just zap you 1,000 times or zap you a whole bunch of Bitcoin and kind of make it appear like this is a well received note, when in reality most people don't like that note. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think there is a danger in thinking about how can we stop bad actors.
Well, not stop or whatever, right?
Let me just finish, because I 100% agree with you. But I think that if we concentrate on how we can reward good behavior for everyone, and how we can control, and I think that goes with what Seth was saying the other day in another nest, was like, well, that algorithm, it's simple. The closer the control is to the pleb using it, the safer it's going to be. And it's just that we have this additional layer of information. And I think when you look at trust, because really that's what we're talking about, is that how could I tell an algorithm who I trust and who I don't trust? Is it the likes? Is it the zaps? Is it the comments? What is it the amount of reposts that I've done of that person in the past? Which one of these one is the metric, in your opinion, that is a higher sign of trust? And you say, this is trustworthy, this content is trustworthy.
Oh, and even with them, though, I mean, people are capable of having great ideas and then also coming back with a bad idea. I mean, I'm sure as hell guilty of it too, right? And like, how can an algorithm account for that as well, right? But maybe I deserve to get ratioed because I made a really dumb, poorly thought out note or something like that, right? But I don't know how an algorithm could kind of like save for that, right?
But it would be, for me, it's like
Always like a nefarious
it would be up to the user decide how is he gonna, what's the term you use? Ratio.
Right, it's like a ratio is kind of like let's say I post a really bad tweet that was a really dumb idea or had some kind of like sexist or racist commentary behind it or something. Something that generally the community of users don't jive with or agree with. And so basically what happens is that you get more comments than you do likes on a tweet. And that's kind of how it shows. It can show the users that this is a bad idea, right? And so if the World Economic Forum said, eat the bugs or something like that on Nostr, and we knew that was a nefarious agenda, we could all just comment on that post, in defiance of that agenda or whatever. And if there was 600 comments, but there was only 2 likes or something like that, you would know that was a ratioed note. And we'd be like, yeah, that's because it's a World Economic Forum. They're nefarious actors. They're making bad tweets. And they're trying to share bad narratives that people don't want, right? And so that's kind of like the whole thing of it's just a community protection thing that's kind of formed out of Twitter over the years to kind of like help defend against people that maybe don't have your best interest in mind or maybe just post really stupid things.
You use the word community, and I think that's the key. It's like, if I can decide who is the community that controls my algorithm, and I can remove and add people based on their actions, on how they influence my algorithm, you get exactly the same result, but in a way that every user can implement it the way he wants. Because I think we're talking, like the other day we were in a nest about safe space. I think Seth was here as well. And it was the first time that I was like, well, actually people need a safe space. Some people need the safe space, they want it, it's one of their needs, and Nostr should be able to deliver on that. My way of dealing with having a safe space is just using the mute button and unfollowing people. If I see something that doesn't mix with my energy, it's gone. And I think that it's a culture thing. And I think Seth, when he talks about culture, makes a good point. With Bitcoin, there is a culture that goes along with it. And with Nostr, maybe we can have a culture that goes along with it. And it's just like, well, you see something that you don't want in your bubble, just remove it. And people will be isolated because nobody wants to listen to them.
But like, what if say I posted 99 tweets that you related to and you really liked my content, generally overall speaking, but I just had one note. I keep saying tweets, but note. Let's say I have one note that like is just not a good one. I don't know. Woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or my dog, bit me or something, and I'm really in a foul mood, and I just blurted something out that really wasn't characteristic of my my general day-to-day, thoughtful note or whatever. Like, muting would be like, man, that's kind of, I wouldn't want to mute somebody if I agreed with them 99% of the time and just disagreed with them on 1%. But maybe I want to let them know that 1% of the time that, that was a bonehead.
Disagreement is different than having a strong reaction to what you see or read. Like a disagreement, I love disagreement. Disagreement can be life-changing for the person, for me. It's a good thing. It's just how we do it. So disagreement is not what I'm going to unfollow, and it's not even if you're having a bad day and you're in a bad mood. it's going to be like high level toxicity, or you recognize self-absorbed behavior, and you're just like, well, this person is just mining for attention. I'm gone. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Not
You
in my
don't think
bubble.
like you don't think like maybe a note should be like socially punished? Like, I mean, I guess that would like lead to like a maybe social credit system or something like that, or kind of the foundations. I guess we're kind of railing against, right?
I think freedom is messy, and with freedom comes responsibility, and maybe a bit more freedom would, I don't know, at least for me, every time in my life I had more responsibility, I became a better person and I was a happier man. So maybe if we just responsibilize everybody instead of just saying, oh, we're gonna take care of you and we're gonna create the safe space for you. It's like, no, you want to have a safe space, you can build it, or you can create one here. Here's the tool for you to have your safe space if you want to. But don't expect us to actually create a system where everything becomes your safe space, because your safe space is different than somebody else's safe space, and mine, and so on. So, like, for me, the beauty of Nostr is there is no one rule that fits everything. We can split it in little bits and communities, and they can all work in different rules, and everybody can find its happy space.
Yeah, no, I'm personally I'm personally enjoying my little kind of Noster bubble that I've created for myself right now. So I call it a safe space or whatever. You know, you can kind of you can engineer who you're following, what kind of content you're receiving, all that other stuff. You know, really, really well on Noster.
But I like for example, the likes. One thing that I like is that sometime I realize that somebody followed me because they liked a post. And I see, like in Damus, I don't see the name of the person because I don't follow it. I just see like the condensed address.
Yeah,
So I click on
it's kind of a
click
little
on it.
notification.
The like tells me this person is interested in this content that you just posted.
Right. You can follow them back. No, exactly. It's
And you
kind of
can have a look. You can have a look at the profile. So for me, there is this value in the like, in discovering people that gravitate to some of the stuff that I post, and they're like, well, they like the same stuff that I like. So if you remove the like, I think I would lose that.
Yeah, I think.
But
Did you listen to? Did you see
I would like
Will's
to
comments
listen.
earlier? When it was like, would you rather have 121 people like your note, or just have one person zap you 21 sats? Like for me, it was like, yeah, I would much rather have 121 people like my note, because yeah, you're right, because you get 121 notifications of people that you could potentially be following that maybe you're not following, right? And
Exactly.
and there's another thing too, is like, you know, we're trying to like portray this value for value, and like not all value information is valued equally. Like if you told me like if you posted a note like Bitcoin is great, there's only 21 million Bitcoin, I'm like, yeah, I already know that Bitcoin's great, and I already know that there's 21 million Bitcoin. You've not provided me any value because this is something I'm already well aware of. But like I could actually just use a like as like to be like, yeah, I support you in your note, right? And it's just kind of like just a little quick mini validator or something like that. And then it also like, if I'm, you know, if I'm gonna, why should I like have to give you or be expected to give you some kind of monetary value for when you didn't provide me any actual value, right? And so it's kind of like that happy little medium, and maybe it doesn't require a reply, because it's like, what am I going to reply? Like, yeah, duh, you know, or something like that. I mean, like, or agreed or something. I mean, I don't know. I guess, you know, I think there's a use for it personally.
For me, it was kind of like the way I posted it the other day was like a like means I've read it, but like I really read it. I really stopped and I took the time to read what you
Right.
wrote.
It's a read receipt, right? Exactly.
A
No,
zap,
totally.
yeah, but for me, I use it personally like, yeah, I read you. No, yeah, I read it. Yeah, depends with who. Like a good morning, sometimes it's like, we're not going to go back and forth 20 times. We're going to have to end this, and the like is a good way of ending it. I use zaps sometimes to end back and forth. It's like, okay, I cannot afford to continue this conversation, so here is a zap to end it. But for me, the zap means it's valuable. I've noticed some people find valuable that you reply to their good mornings.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I really don't like. I just do it to kind of be cordial and nice and welcoming and try to like,
Yeah, but
just
for
be
me,
nice
for
or
me,
whatever.
it shows, and I might be naive when I think about it this way, but it shows an intention of I want to keep this in my life. So when you zap, it's kind of like I zap a lot when people make me laugh, and if you make me laugh a lot, I'm gonna zap more, because laughter is something that I want in my life.
Right,
I
yeah,
could
it's
do
kind
I
of nice
could
and
do
value.
without the good mornings, but I cannot do without the laughters. So I reward what I want to keep in my life. And for me, the upmost layer is the repost. It's kind of like, holy fuck, all my friends need to know this.
It just seems kind of silly to me. Like if I just saw you in the street in person and I shook your hand and said "Good morning" to you, that all of a sudden I should expect some kind of like monetary reward in return for doing that, right? It's just like just being nice and being a human and cordial. But like if you're someone like Gigi who wrote like some brilliant like Bitcoin piece like Bitcoin is time or one of his other amazing pieces that really gets you to think like yeah I'm gonna zap the shit out of that because that just gave me a whole new perspective on how to look at Bitcoin or whatever that I never really thought of before.
But
It
even
feels
when
like
you start zapping these really low amounts, it's like less than a cent. I think you start to look at money differently and you're like, well, I can spread $8 a month on rewarding people that tell me good morning. Why not? It's like,
Yeah. Well, I
some,
think
why not? It makes me happy. It makes them happy. Everybody's happier, and it helps me it reduces my health costs because I'm a happier person. I have less health issues.
yeah, I mean for sure I agree with that too. But it's kind of like just different levels of engagement, right? Like you got a reply that's one level of engagement. You got a zap, which is like a I loved your whatever level of engagement, or maybe just a like is just a quick I read it, acknowledge it, agree with it, click, move on. So yeah, I
But
think
for
there's just
but for me to answer my own question, because kind of like nobody answered to the question before, which was which one shows the highest amount of trust. It's the repost. Like if I often repost something from somebody, it shows that I trust that person because I'm willing to take his message and send it to all the people that listen to me. So for me, there is nothing higher in terms of like showing trust than reposting.
yeah. I think if you do all four, that would kind of be like the ultimate, right? Like I actually made a meme on this where it's just like like, and it's got that Vince McMahon where he kind of like gets crazy over time as kind of different things go down. It's like a like, and then he smiles or whatever, and it's like plus repost, and then he gets to a different level, and it gets like then like plus reply, and then it finally goes to like plus repost plus reply plus zap, and all of a sudden he's like falling off his chair in like amazement or whatever. It's just
I
like,
think
yeah,
when I repost, I always give the like and the zap as well.
yeah. It's just like the quad.
And if it's really good, you do a quote repost because you want to be sure that it shows differently on the feed. So you give like the comment, the like, the zap, you give you give the everything. So yeah, for me that's the highest one. So in an algorithm, I would give more power to control my algorithm to the people that I often repost, for example. So if I often repost stuff from Seth, whatever Seth thinks of other content will have an impact on my algorithm, which is higher than Bevel, that I don't trust. Sorry, Bevel.
no, it's a good example, and I think like going back to the good mornings and good nights and stuff. There's some people that find a lot of value in that. Especially nowadays, it's a lonely society. Not a lot of people will have community or engagement in their daily lives, and this could be a big part of it to sort of set their day. I try to post a really just kind of a positive affirmation to start the day. I do it for myself, and then hopefully others find value in it. And I don't really expect anyone to zap or have any. I don't do it for the zaps, but Some people do. Maybe they find value out of it. So I think it's all kinds. That's the beauty of this protocol, is that it's sort of built for you by you, and however you want to whatever your content you want to see.
Your good morning notes are really packed with positive energy. It's like when you read them, you can actually feel it. So if that's your intention, you're succeeding.
Awesome, thanks. That's 100% my intention.
I should maybe change, because I have this tradition of starting the day with some sarcastic, I don't want to get out of bed joke.
Yeah.
So maybe that's having an impact on my energy. I should change it maybe.
For sure. It says everything about your demeanour, mate. Got to get up and get in, mate.
Yeah, I
afternoon.
usually,
It's like what I was saying before. I need the laughter, and sarcastic laughter is the one that I like the most, I think.
One thing I would like to say about zapping good morning notes, I zap people that take the time to actually not just thumbs me, but write something back. Then I'll respond and zap. But just of late, I am thinking, so this is a question, do people that are sat sluts get taught that, oh, okay, every time I respond, he gives me a zap? So are you actually getting a proper good morning, or is that person just doing it because he knows you'll zap you? That's
I
where
don't
I'm
think
at.
so. I don't think so. I mix them up. I do. I'll zap people sometimes for engaging, and then sometimes I'll like, and sometimes I'll comment. I try not to be super consistent
Yeah,
for that reason, because I don't want it. I don't know.
become
Maybe
habitual.
yeah, maybe it's, and I never even thought of that until you just said that, but I just kind of do it naturally.
Yeah, but then when I do that, I think, well, that person then sees that I zapped those four, but I didn't get one. What have I done? Just thoughts. That was all.
Yeah, and especially with the one touch zap,
Yeah,
it's there. Sometimes I've noticed this with Get Albie, like it doesn't go through. Like I'll hit it, and
yeah,
I think it goes through, and then I go back, and then I'm like, I actually have to check my wallet to see if it went through, and it's not good. So that's if I miss a zap, that's why.
yeah.
That explains everything. I couldn't sleep well for 3 days. Now finally, I was.
I see. It bothered me too.
Yeah,
No,
if I'm
I
being
had it during the Zapathon last week. For 20 minutes or so, I was going crazy, zapping. Nothing was going through, and I didn't even notice.
Oh, same. I had the same thing. I zapped harder than I ever zapped before, and then realized that like half of them didn't go through.
And I realized at the end, when I went to look at Zap Life, I was like, how is it possible that with one tap zap, I did far less than with manual zapping, let's say. But manual zapping was more fun. Like Zapathon with manual zapping, that you have to like fire between the two applications, is way more fun.
Yeah.
But we managed to crash. We managed to crash Albie. We managed to crash everybody last time, which was cool. Can't always be about slashing and killing Wallet of Satoshi.
Yeah, and I also, since I've swapped over to Alby for the one tap, I miss my dopamine hit of when I get a zap when I used to use WOS. Like I used to get notification, oh, someone zapped me.
Yeah,
you don't get it.
you don't really get the feedback.
Yeah,
It shows up on the. I mean, it shows up on the notifications, like that somebody zapped you, but yeah, it doesn't like come through your wallet. Like,
Oh, Amethyst does. I have to like Zapathon. I have to like swipe the crap out of my phone to like get the notifications off my phone, because it's just like a laundry list of like 50, 60 or whatever zaps. So Amethyst still shows you the zap notification.
That's why during Zapathon, I usually operate like a ninja. I don't tell anybody that I'm there zapping, because if not, they zap you, and if they zap you, they slow you down. So if you really want to get like a high hit rate during Zapathon, you need to zap like a ninja that nobody sees you. That's how Ralph does it. When I managed to snatch his crown, that's how I did it. Nobody knew I was there. I was just zapping. No posting, just zapping.
You're talking to a meme artist who has more zaps than the half hour time allows.
Oh,
So
you're
I got
harvesting during Zapathon.
I've got to balance. You got to balance it. I'm not
It's
a zap slut like or zap, I mean, quote unquote zap slut like Will, I think, coined that term or whatever. But I try to dish out as much as I receive. I try to just keep that balance, right? Just want to have like a zapathon circle jerk going.
like for maybe like a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, I did like really Zapathon, and then I was like, I actually want to watch it. So one evening I didn't zap, and I just watched the memes. And man, when it starts, it's an explosion. Your feed just goes insane, and it's beautiful.
I mean, someone's got to provide the entertainment, right? If people don't post their memes to Zapathon, then we really don't have a Zapathon, right? So it's kind of just how it's got to be.
It is good fun though. I kind of follow like a zap karma, like, and that's why I try to like be at least above average on the zap generosity, because I think that there's a zap karma that will come back to you. I don't even know what I'm like my net overall is, but I'm sure I'm pretty balanced.
And it's the net overall, it's a lie, because for example, like if you send it to somebody with if they set up an invoice, like Ralph sent me some money, and then I had to send it back to him. He zapped me, but I sent it back to him with an invoice, so it doesn't show as a zap. So like now I have like I can't remember how many sats, way too many,
Oh, so it
that
only
I've
zaps.
received. Yeah,
It's
in
tied to
terms of
your
my balance.
profile, probably, right?
But Nostr Band, when you go on Nostr Band and have a look, that shows you you received and sent.
Yeah, Nostr.band, yeah. But there's been issues with that, like, because I've seen some stuff where, like, some of the Zap numbers are just, like, way skewed, and I don't know why that is. If that's, I forget who it was. I think it was, like, JP Frog. He showed, like, and it was some ridiculous, like, 100 million, um, you know, Satoshis received or something like that. And I asked him about it, and he's like, I have no idea. Like, I never received that many. It's showing that many, but I don't know why.
I know that like during the last Zapathon, something must have happened, because QW had an insane amount. Can't remember how much. And when he realized that amount, he immediately contacted Semisol. So I think Semi intentionally played with something to kind of show that those amounts were not real. That you could actually manipulate what you see on Zap Live.
Oh, interesting.
That's my understanding of it. He wrote like this note saying, Sammy, come down from your bedroom to the kitchen. We need to talk. Something like that.
I don't know if you guys saw, but that Zap Life was up on the conference screen behind the.
Yeah, I kept zapping because you could put the note in. I put the Bitcoin lobby address in there and kept zapping some free advertising. It's
And
like,
that's exactly when Sammy decided to fucking play with it. When he was up there on the big board.
Fortunately, I didn't see anyone kind of like mess around with it and post like some kind of lewd or vicious stuff, because it really could have been manipulated the wrong way if someone really wanted to get pretty nefarious, and then that would just be broadcast on their screen, and not only that, their recording of their stuff that they're putting up on YouTube.
I think it's good to know that we have white hat hackers with us. People that can do it but will never do it. They will do it to test the system, to show the vulnerabilities, but when they do it, they will never do anything nasty with it.
Well, that's why I think I align with Bitcoiners. It's just the ethos, the ethical value that everyone sort of aligns with. Although you're starting to see more and more like I don't know, it must be a thing. Like if you've made a stack like early or something like that, and you just get bored and you have to, like, I see that Jason Williams, who I had a lot of respect for, but all he tweets about now is Pepe coin, and it's just non freaking stop. And I know he's like an original Bitcoiner, and he was mining Ethereum to buy Bitcoin like long ago, but like it's nonstop Pepe coin. It's just like, is that where you go after you make all the money, you buy all the Lambos and all the shit? You just subject to pump and dump shit because that's the only way you can make money now instead of doing it like the old fashioned way. It's just a shame.
I think some people just wired that when they see. It's a nice quote that I like by a French rapper. Know your dark side, own it, understand it, so that every day you can be happy about all the evil shit you did not do.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think we see, some people see the vulnerabilities in the system, and the system being other people, and how they can be manipulated and say this is wrong. We should have a new world in which this is not possible, and that is Bitcoin and that is Nostr, let's say. And then you have the people that realize that this is possible and they just jump on it. They're wired to jump on it.
Yeah, that would make sense. Just see opportunity. Don't really think of anything but seizing the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I could have probably become a crypto millionaire at this point, just jumping on Ponzi's and pump and dumps and NFTs and Pepe coins and ordinals and all this other stuff that they continue to come up with year after year. But I just bury my head. I do my 10 to 12 hours of fiat mining a day, and I just stack a little bit of sats so every time I get some extra money that I can throw at it. And I just, it's just a choice I made, but I know how to manipulate the system. It doesn't mean I want to or should, though. I mean, it's kind of, I know how to manipulate these, newbies, and we're only 4% adoption really when it comes to this stuff. And so you still have 96% of the world's population that you can sucker into buying a monkey JPEG. So it's like, you can either be the person who wants to take those people for a ride, or you just kind of be the person who advocates for a good, sound, ethical money that can benefit humanity. And it's just like, I think that's the side I've obviously chosen. I think it's the side most of you guys here have chosen as well. And I think that's the side, generally speaking, that most Bitcoiners have taken.
So. Yeah, I don't view money, or at least I try not to view money as, like, my dad always said, it's just really a means of getting from point A to point B. And I've always kind of just tried to look at it in the practical sense that way. That money's not the most important thing. It's just a tool from getting from A to B.
Money gave me, let's say, to have money on the side and to have that money do well, let's say, gave me time and gave me freedom of saying, fuck off, I'm not going to do this, which is huge.
Oh, I agree. I mean,
and that's the hope I have with Bitcoin, and that is that, like, eventually you get more and more people that might reach that level of saying, wait a minute, I can actually say fuck off. I actually have enough to get by for like 3 years. I can actually try to build whatever I really want to do with my life.
Yeah, and that's arguably, I mean, more important than money is your time, and being able to set yourself up to where your time is spent on things that you want to do is obviously the most important. But I say that like on the back of that explanation that these guys who made a lot of money, and they have money in other investments, and it's just like they just can't get enough, and it's they're selling these pump and dump schemes just to try to, I don't know, make an extra. But I don't know what the incentive is or the motivation is behind it, but it just feels nefarious. It's what was that guy's, the heavy set guy in the tracksuit that was pumping that shit coin? Like it was so cringe. He would be on Twitter and he was like wearing these, designer clothes and Gucci, or I don't even know.
Richard Hart,
Oh yeah, that guy.
the Hex guy. Yeah.
And like I used to watch him like, what the fuck is he doing? Like I just couldn't understand it. Like I understand you're trying to sell your shitcoin, but he's just making at least in my eyes, he looked like he's making an ass out of himself. Like it's like, and I get having fun, but he was just like, I don't know. I just don't align with that perspective.
We're playing two different games here, right? Like they're playing the game of destroying people's lives. We're playing the game of trying to uplift people's lives.
But I think there is truth in what you say. It's kind of like some people and some time in. It's kind of like disturbing when you realize it. They're just wired to control. So whatever mean they can get their hands on to control other people and to have in that way, I think it comes out of fear maybe. If they control this world that they've created around them, well, they are less afraid. And it's I had to deal with it, like people that they're just wired like that. And after a bit they realize that they're wired like that, and they realize that they can't change.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, and I guess that there are different types of people in the world, and that's certainly a perspective I've taken on recently. Is that like there's certain things you can't control, and you just got to let them unfold, and like even like in those cases, like while there's an internal desire to want to comment on it and get involved, like say stop doing that, you're a shithead, it's unethical, but like I also understand that, my little comment, it doesn't really hold value, and people have to explore this and go through this themselves to understand.
And with some people, like you, even if you want peace, you want to be peaceful, they want war.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Like, you cannot ignore it. And so it's kind of like keeping in mind that while we're building, or they're building, because I'm not building anything, I'm talking about builders and shit posting, the enemy is also building. And the enemy is control. Like if cypherpunk and Bitcoin and Nostr is freedom, with all the mess that goes along with it, the opposite end of the spectrum is control, and the CBDCs are spooky.
Yeah, we're always going to have this struggle, this tug of war between centralization and decentralization. That's just always going to be the case in humanity. And the best thing we can do is just try through open information, like free market information like Nostr, and freedom money like Bitcoin, to try to create better incentives for everyone in this world so that we can uplift people and kind of give people better motivations to maybe be better people than maybe we currently are, and what we're living under with the fiat standard and centralized authoritarian control in some of these governments. So
Well,
if something's diseased, man, if society's diseased in a certain extent, it's gonna take time to heal. And so, but what you have to do is just provide the incentives and just let it play out over time. And so,
yeah, you can only
they will get there.
build the system to support it. You can't say, hey, the goal is to get everyone on Bitcoin. You just got to build the system and let everyone kind of navigate to it. You can't preach to them and say, hey, buy Bitcoin. I mean, you can, and you might get one or two that way, but I don't think it's a great approach, because people find Bitcoin or they'll find Nostr when they're ready for it.
And so you build it out and you just wait, try to warm the water the best you can. And then, when people gravitate over and then they see the incentives and they're like, well, this is a no brainer. Why wasn't I here earlier? Right. And then they figure it out.
For some countries, people will be kind of like forced to see it as an option. But like, I think it's, I might be crazy. It's unstoppable.
We're all crazy, and you're right.
It's unstoppable, and within the next 10 years, the US dollar will be pegged to Bitcoin.
You think?
By
I
2030, yeah.
I
2030, 2035.
yeah, I do wonder. I mean, right now this is the phase they'll fight you, right? They're in the they'll fight you phase, and but there are people in government that understand or have a better understanding of it and understand the value um, of Bitcoin and why it's a constructive tool for society. But then there's the people, especially the people that have control over the money printer. I mean, can you imagine what kind of dopamine hit that is? Be like, hey, just go print $1 billion or whatever, and how powerful that must make them feel to be able to do that.
And it
My
allows the banks to recklessly gamble and be like, "There's no consequences for failure." Like, yeah,
yeah,
imagine doing that. You just get to play an unlimited lottery where the jackpot's $1 billion, but you didn't have to actually spend all that money to acquire the lottery tickets to win the jackpot. Like, that's basically
yeah.
what it is.
My thoughts on the US dollar being pegged to Bitcoin. I think that the US dollar will crash and burn because the people that have the power slash money, they won't give that up. And I think that they're too entrenched probably in the fiat system and the fiat world to give up. And as soon as they do, they lose all control and power. So why would they give up? They just go down screaming. That's my. I can't get away from that playing out.
Well,
I can't see the people in
Like,
power
so
swapping over.
one of the reason I use those dates is that I play with the number of 1 million. And I might be totally crazy, but I believe it was in the intention of Satoshi, and that's why the 21 million of them. If you play with the M2 of the US dollar, and if you look at kind of like what was projected, so it was kind of like skewed because we had that massive pump after COVID where they printed like crazy. But if you play with like all the Bitcoin in existence, if you play with the 21 million hypothetical already in your mind, and you get to a Bitcoin that costs $1 million, you can cover the entirety of the US dollar M2 with Bitcoin. So that's the point at which you can actually do it. Before that, you can't really do it in an elegant way. So you kind of like at that price point, you can kind of look at pegging in a way that works with the amount of money that is actually in circulation. What's interesting with the M2 of the US dollar is that it's been shrinking in the last few months. So actually the amount of money is being reduced. Another thing that is interesting is that there is clearly a new player mining blocks.
did you see that?
And
Yeah,
not just a few of them. And if you look at like how the hash rates they have increased over time, it's not a small operation.
Do we have any ideas? Russia?
That's what I wonder, if it was a state-sponsored mining pool, because I mean it's shown up as unknown, and I think they won like the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 out of 10 or whatever it was. I'm gonna check it again.
From what I heard, Russia was buying up every miner they can get their hands on at this point. But I don't. Maybe that's just a rumor. I don't know.
I I think that there's incentives for them to do that, and especially now. I mean, who knows? Because those most of those people are actors. Putin's an actor on the stage, and I know he's said openly about quote unquote cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin being the strong one. Because I mean, these guys got to store their wealth somewhere too. But he said, money doesn't have like this new money doesn't have boundaries, and like seem to have a better understanding of the importance of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. Calling it crypto, but I mean, I think that's just a generic term that politicians use to relate to To the people or to the people that are communicating with?
All our enemies, so to speak, over the last couple of years have been stacking gold in their central banks. You have Russia, China, and the like. Maybe one of those has said, right, we've got enough gold, now we need to hedge our bet and start mining Bitcoin. So it would have to be one of those states that, you know, has to be hidden. Russia, China, Iran, the Saudis.
Yeah, I mean, if they're smart, I mean, like, and I assume these people with a lot of capital are not stupid, that they're looking at it as an opportunity.
I mean, and I've said this before, it shows the lack of adoption by state because, you know, the round figure that everyone quotes by Glassnode, etc., of coins left on exchanges is about the 2 million round figures. If someone went to buy all those coins, that's only $60 billion at that 30 grand. So $60 billion for a state is not a lot of money.
Yeah, that
Someone
goes
like,
to Ukraine pretty frequently.
yeah, I mean, it's so, you know, if there are state sovereigns acquiring, they're not acquiring very much because we would see that fall on exchanges pretty
I think
rapidly.
that from a state point of view, mining is more important than acquiring. Like acquiring can be done, like you said, fairly quickly and probably has started already. I think you have to keep in mind that announcements will be made once we're above 70,000 again.
Yeah.
Until we're not above that line, it's going to be shh, don't say anything to anybody.
Yeah. Also, it behooves them to keep quiet about these. If they're stealth buying or their stealth acquisition as well, because if they start to tip their hat, then all their citizens are going to go batshit crazy and hog wild buying it up. And you know, even though 2 million Bitcoin is on the exchange, like if you bought all of that, it wouldn't be 30,000. You're buying it all at. So you kind of got to buy it when it's available OTC, or just invest in the mining infrastructure.
Yeah, I guess someone with cheap power like Russia, you know, mining's still cheaper than paying, you know, 30,000 a coin. So
You just like order buy all 2 million Bitcoin that's on the exchange, right, all at once. Like if you started upticking or whatever, people are going to try to set their sells higher and all this other stuff, right? And so you're not going to pay 30 grand to get all into that.
I think also it's quite important that if, as a state, you want to participate and believe in Bitcoin as a network, then it's important that you mine to be part of securing it and be sure that you don't leave potential enemies that will use the same network as you take over, gang together and take over. So I think the mining race, once if it hasn't started already, the mining race will be real. It's gonna be something serious, and people, the hash rate will eventually explode.
Well, it'll become even more real and more competitive if the geopolitical tensions escalate, and the chip manufacturers are limited to, and I help me out. I mean, are all the ASIC chips manufactured in Taiwan?
I have no idea.
I believe so, but the US is setting those two companies that make them there setting up in the US. So that's the other war that's going on, is the access to those chips and the technology. Yeah.
Bitcoin is the Switzerland of currency, kind of like. There was this idea during the wars and during tension that Switzerland provided this place where it didn't matter what side of the war you were on, you could come, you could do business, you wouldn't be judged, nobody cared where you came from. And I think Bitcoin offers the same kind of like solution. And it's just a network that you don't even have to go to another country, you can actually run part of it in your own country.
It's kind of like a global Switzerland. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is. Because that spot has been taken. It's disappeared. You have a few countries that have tried to take it. You have Singapore, but Singapore has some strong ties, let's say. You had a moment, you had Jordan, who wanted to be kind of like the same kind of like idea, but couldn't do it. Switzerland was forced to stop being it to kind of like become friend with Europe. So they had to give away a lot of the stuff that they used to do. So that spot of kind of like this ground where you can just come and nobody cares where you come from. I think Nostr and Bitcoin fill the bill.
It's interesting.
About other nation states trying to be the next Switzerland, right? You don't have to worry about Singapore and Jordan trying to be. It's just one of those things that we have to like relinquish control globally and just accept that we have this apolitical global reserve asset that's completely neutral. That there can't be a next, Switzerland or whatever. It just is, right? And so don't even worry about trying to be that next thing because you just can't be, right?
And just on Singapore, like I live there, so I understand the place. They don't have any power generation whatsoever. Like they've got fuck all resources. So a country with that much wealth, I've got no doubt that they actually have two sovereign funds. They get more money than a ball can shit, and I've got no doubt that they're acquiring Bitcoin in their sovereign funds, but they can never mine it because they just don't have the power supply. They haven't got enough power as it is. So they're not the only place in the world that can't mine. So what we're talking about, once that, slowly at first all of a sudden does finally hit, then all those countries that don't have the resources, they're going to have to buy. So that's going to accelerate any free coins on the exchanges, in my opinion, like literally overnight. It only takes, let the cat out of the bag from one country, and then it'll be open flatter just to get a piece.
Yeah, isn't UAE really pushing to try to be the modern day Switzerland? I think they're the next ones in line trying to create the independent hub, but I know that there's a lot of challenges there too.
Well,
Marathon made the announcement during the Bitcoin conference that they were going to open up a mining hub over the UAE.
I think Switzerland had a cultural advantage, and that is that every state, canton, like they call it, is used to having to deal with a different culture on a daily basis. It's like inside Switzerland, the culture of, and you can see it when they do referendums and elections. The culture is totally different, but they've been running this decentralized model for more than 700 years now. So they were used to like having people with different culture coming and opening the door and dealing with people that are not like them, which I don't believe the UAE have that long term. They can do it short term, and then usually it's like, okay, thank you, goodbye. That's my feeling, at least.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch it play out. I think the timing of the next halving coming up in under a year is going to be one important. The political alignment with it too. Presidential race in the U.S. I think Taiwan has a presidential election as well, and everything else that's going on in the world. I mean, I think it's like the right time to really accelerate mass adoption. And it's the 1% right now who have taken the time to kind of understand it and were curious initially, but 80% of the population is going to adopt it on faith that my government said, or this person said, that it's good, and just use it that way. Same with money today. Most people don't know how checking accounts work or bank accounts work. They just have faith that a dollar is worth a dollar.
I think it's the volatility that scares a lot of people, right? And even if you start talking about DCA and smoothing it out, if you want, over time, people still see these quick, fast movements, and they just don't want to be a part of it.
Well, a lot of people were like, because I know I made a comment on Facebook. I try to, get the normies to adopt every now and again. And the one guy's like, well, you should have bought it at 50,000. I'm like, I did. I bought a bunch at 50,000. And yeah, and then I just bought some yesterday at 28 or 27. But a lot of people are kind of addicted to that gambling model where like they think get rich quick, and we're trying to get it to exchange it into dollars. They don't really see the full picture where this can actually be a currency, and especially with like layer two. And I know, like I saw Callie's said that he's going to start focusing on the cashew adoption, like integration into Nostr, and which is arguably layer three Bitcoin.
Can somebody please, like, I've been given cashew and eCash. Can somebody please explain to me what it is and why it's different and what are we talking about?
I'll give anyone else want to take that?
I mean, I can kind of try to explain it. I've been playing with it a little bit recently. So cashew, and I can, of course, correct me if I'm wrong here. Cashew is Chaumian eCash. The primary difference that I can tell between Lightning and this eCash or cashew thing is there's you don't really have to, like, your liquidity provider is the mint. So essentially you're trusting a third party or a mint not to rug you, because at least as far as cashew goes, the only person who can redeem your tokens back into Bitcoin is the mint that you originally got the tokens from. So it's a slightly different model where you are placing trust in a specific mint. And I think ARK is trying to solve that. ARK is all theoretical, so I guess I won't talk about it. Yeah, as far as cashew goes, it's just a different option. It's interoperable with Lightning, as far as I can tell, and on chain too. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't done a real deep dive into it, but it's basically just a trade-off where you're trusting a mint versus building out liquidity yourself, I guess.
And
You could
that is exchangeable, right? You mint it, but you can convert it back to sats. So you mint it, you can spend it within that mint, or you can convert it back to satoshis.
Yeah, exactly. It's interchangeable, and at least the way that I've seen it used is, at least on Nostr, is people will post that cashew thing. Someone will swoop up those those nuts or whatever the hell they're calling them, and then they'll immediately swap those back into sats or something. But yeah, I mean, it's just a slightly different model.
What's the use case? Why
mixing service. That's my favorite use case for it. You can mix. You can use it as a mixing service. You can be your own mint. You don't have to trust someone else. You can just make your own mint and then just mix it around in a bunch of different cashew wallets or whatever, and put it back into Lightning, and then all of a sudden, there's no KYC attached to any of it.
It's a little bit more private in terms of like traceability. I mean, Lightning, of course, has its issues, and so does on-chain Bitcoin. So this is slightly more private. I haven't really dug into the tracking side of it too much personally, but as I explore it more, I probably will. So I definitely lean more on the privacy side of things.
So privacy, okay.
Yeah, privacy is at least one big advertised thing.
I think you can send via like text message or like email, like through text. I mean, there's another.
Yeah. I mean, that's my understanding of it. If I missed anything or was inaccurate, please let me know.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to understand what's the advantage over Lightning. So when you say privacy, it starts to make a bit more sense. But even there,
it's trade-offs, right? And so if you aren't the mint, then you have to trust that somebody else is the mint for you. But the mint is also uses blind signatures, so you can't actually, you don't know who, if you're connected to like a bunch of wallets or whatever, and you're just the centralized mint, you have no idea who is giving or who is going through your mint or whatever, and so that's where the privacy comes in. But you could sprout up a bunch of wallets, be your own mint, kind of mix around your eCash or whatever. Amongst
when you mint, is it an on-chain transaction? How does it work?
you're minting, you're basically minting a Xiaomi and eCash. You're minting a different token. Like you could call it Ethereum 2.0 if you wanted to, or anything really. And it's just an eCash token, but it gets settled. First of all, the liquidity comes in from Lightning Network and it gets settled out back into the Lightning Network. And so it goes in as Bitcoin, comes out as Bitcoin, and everything in between is just like an eCash.
Okay.
But it's all based, I mean, if you look at it, it's basically just Satoshis anyways, right? It's just some like intermediary, right? Think of it as kind of like what Strike does, where it's like, a dollar. You might have $1 in your Strike account, and you send it over the Bitcoin rails to a merchant that also receives $1 in the end. But in between, there was the Bitcoin. It's the same thing with like eCash, right? Like the Bitcoin's going in.
Strike uses USDT for that, though.
Oh, they're using USDT for it.
Yeah, Strike uses USDT to transfer.
They just introduced that though.
No, it's been around for a while.
Has it? Okay.
Oh yeah, they've been using USDT like since the start.
So the USDT, right? You deposit fiat, and then they convert it to USDT. But then, like between you issuing USDT and receiving USDT, they're using the Bitcoin rails. And so it's the same thing with eCash, where Bitcoin is what goes into the ecosystem, whatever. You move the eCash around amongst each other in a bunch of different eCash wallets or Cashew wallets, and then when you want to actually like deposit or send it out, withdraw it from the eCash ecosystem, it has to go through Lightning, and so then it'll go back into your Bitcoin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you really can't it's not like alchemy where you're like converting it into like Ethereum or something like that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Almost. Thanks.
Almost. It's just the eCash part is just an intermediary, and you get to set the rules. If you own the mint, you can set the rules of what that is. Like you could call it like Gek coin or something like that, right? But it's not really a shit coin because the only way you can actually extract it out is through Bitcoin.
Okay.
Make sense?
Makes more sense now. So I get it's a layer 3 hooked to Lightning, where I can mint my own eCash, and it's all backed by sats.
Yes.
Yes. That's my understanding of it.
And in order to get eCash out of the ecosystem, to get your wealth or your value, it has to go back out through Lightning. And so you go back into sats or Bitcoin at that point.
But you said something about only the minter can redeem. What was that thing you said early at the beginning?
Yeah, only the mint that gave you your tokens can redeem your tokens back for sats. So that's one of the big drawbacks, is that if you're trusting another mint or something, there's a potential that they could take down their mint, and then your e-tokens are essentially trapped. Yeah, and you can't redeem it for Lightning or sats or whatever. That's in my opinion, that's one of the biggest drawbacks. And I think ARC was trying to, or at least theoretically is trying to solve that by adding Lightning interoperability between, to add Lightning channels between mints, so you can like kind of transfer back and forth. But that's again,
you can currently do intermint swaps now.
Sorry, what was that?
You can currently do intermint swaps now.
Oh. I didn't know that. Okay, that's actually a lot better.
Yeah.
So to me, I think the trustless use case here is to be your own mint, use it as a mixing service, get your Bitcoin non-KYC, and then get it into a wallet where you're not being KYC. For me personally, that's like the main draw for cash. What I see. Hey, well, do you know anything about ASPs or ARC service providers that would be running the ARC layer?
Arc's literally just theoretical right now. There's no code. The GitHub is empty, and the Telegram chat is just full of theoretical questions about how the protocol might work.
Talking about like pools or something like that, like a 250 pools that would transact with the main chain, so it'd be like a 5-second transaction fee. I'm just wondering. I'm curious, like who could open up like an ASP or an Arc service provider, which would be like your pool, right? Your liquidity pool.
Yeah,
like if that's open to anybody to be able to do it, or if that's something where it's like kind of a gatekeeper.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll wait till I can see some actual code before I make decisions on Arc. In theory, it sounds cool, but yeah, we'll see.
It's interesting. With anything else, like with every tool, man, like it's for me, it's always the more the merrier, and it's like just as long as you understand the trade-offs with everything, like I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like I might just use Cashew for a mixing service because I don't trust that, some other person being a mint or whatever. And like with Fetty, it's kind of like the community mint or whatever. It's very similar to Cashew. Like I might not ever want to use that kind of trust-based model, and so I just might not use it, right? But they're tools that people can use, and people will stand to benefit from them, right? As long as they're aware of the trade-offs and they don't get rug pulled on some of the trade-offs that are being presented to them. So,
yeah, it's good to have options and
right.
Transparency.
I've got something that's not clear in my head how it pans out. Like everyone goes on about KYC and non-KYC. Unfortunately, my stack's predominantly KYC because I didn't have much choice at the time. But what happens if in this choke point or the fighting from the governments various around the world, if you can't actually prove where you got those sats from, or they can see that they've been mixed, they don't actually become like illegal, so to speak. Like you can't cash them out. Do you know what I'm saying? Like at least when you buy KYC, the government knows you've got it. It's like, right, he's got X. Then that might be okay. But if the government says, well, you've got X, but where the fuck did you get it and how did you get it? Unless you can prove it, we're confiscating it or whatever, I don't know. But I sort of see pros and cons for both. I don't quite.
The KYC, like if the government finds out that you have non-KYC and you like slip or something like that, and you kind of like get rid of your privacy, they're just going to tax you on it. But they're going to tax you on it at the rate that it is currently, and they're not going to tax you on it maybe at the rate you bought it, which might have been much cheaper. So, but a lot of people that want the non-KYC want the privacy. They're going to use a lot of the privacy tools on different layers, such as Cashew and such as Arc and Lightning Network. If we further privacy tools on that, we're going to continue to transact. And another goal of Bitcoin is just to create circular or parallel economies, right? Where it's kind of can reach the government.
Yeah, I realise that non-KYC is great for us when I'm paying you or I'm buying a steak from somebody that sells meat that accepts Bitcoin or whatever. But that doesn't help when you want to interact with the fiat world. And, I'm a realist. I'm still going to have fiat for at least the next 10 to 20 years, at least. So I'm going to have to be interacting with the fiat world, government for taxes and yada, yada, yada. So if you have all your corn in non-KYC, I see that as a bit of a risk.
It just depends what you're holding it for. If you're holding it to give it to your grandkids 80 years down the road or whatever, then
yeah,
we might not live in a world anymore with KYC.
I'm not for a minute saying anything bad.
No, I know. Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there. I've got these. I don't know how to reconcile those thoughts in my own understanding.
I've got both, so I've just got a little bit of both, and I think it's kind of like, to me, it seems a pretty prudent thing to do to try to get a little bit of both. That way, if the government does come down heavy-handed, they can only take so much of my Bitcoin, and I still have a little bit left. The majority of my Bitcoin is non-KYC, but I do have a fair share of KYC as well, and so I just think it's kind of like just reducing the attack vector or like the threat vector through the authoritarian government, and still be able to keep your Bitcoin that you find to be valuable. But
I think I've sort of settled that it's good to have both. in the short term, just as a hedge, because we don't know what they're capable of down the track and how they're going to respond.
Right. I don't think it's one of those things. At least in the United States, they're not going to throw you in jail over it if you expose the fact that you got 9K. They're just going to tax the shit out of you. Well, that could change, right? And you maybe got to be a little bit more careful with your non-KYC Bitcoin to make sure that you're not exposing your identity through transacting. And you never get to a point where you're able to buy a house or something, like a huge purchase that might need some kind of but maybe you could buy something like a boat or something like that, and then just exchange that boat for whatever you need or something. I mean, I don't know. Buy some gift cards or whatever. You can do things transactionally anonymously.
It's just the hard line no KYC people. Like, I've never heard a good answer as to why you would want to consider holding a portion of it as KYC. Like, it just seems like there's a definite division between, the hardcore maxis and then, just your average maxi.
I call them privacy Karens. I think the answer probably lies somewhere in the middle. And maybe getting a little bit more towards non-KYC, but what's that? Thank you.
I was just saying, I'm arguably a privacy Karen. I'm about as anti-KYC as it gets.
Okay.
Hey, me too, right? But if you're going to actually use the Bitcoin at some point, we might, without it might have to be. You want to have that fight, right? Like, you want to have that fight where we don't have to live in a world of KYC. Like, I'm all on that fight. I don't know. Like, the answer probably lies somewhere in the middle, Bevo, I guess. You're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time making huge purchases with non-KYC Bitcoin.
I guess the way that I treat it is my Bitcoin and my fiat funds are completely separate pools. I understand that I think it was Bevo who said you're not really going to get rid of fiat for the next 10 to 20 years. So I just keep it entirely separate. Bitcoin is my Bitcoin, and I use it and spend it how I please, and I acquire it non-KYC, and my fiat is my fiat, and I just keep that separate.
Yeah.
Well, that's where it's good to have a miner, like we talked about before, and that's why I haven't done it yet, but I'm.
You still on that? Did you buy that fucking S19
yet? No, I didn't. I just figured my thoughts were, like, for an investment standpoint, like, it's good to have like something like that. I didn't buy it, but yeah, because of Satoshi Puzzle's response, about the hash power, and so I'm still thinking about it. But I definitely want to get a miner in this cycle right now while they're still cheap, but I just haven't decided which one.
Or doesn't the decision come down to hash per dollar? Whatever the machine.
Yeah, but that's like current rate, right? And I don't know exactly how they calculate that. I mean, it's like how much the efficiency of the machine, but I'm looking at it purely from an investment standpoint.
But isn't it hash per watt? So you can't make anything up. That's it. You get X amount of terahash per watt of the machine, and if it's 2,000 watt, then you get X amount.
Yeah.
Isn't that how it works? I'm no expert, but I thought that's how they worked it out.
Yeah, I think so, is how they calculate it. But like I said, I'm in the camp, but I'm just not ready to pull the trigger yet. But soon.
Yeah. I think solar panels are the first buy. You need to get that set up.
I also say this too is, like, in order for Bitcoin to win, we're gonna have to put ourselves out there and fight. Like, we can't just sit here and hiding and be shadowy or whatever forever. Like, at some point you can be like, this is me. Like, I'm adopting Bitcoin. I don't give a fuck. Like, I got a problem with that. I don't care. Like, this is the new reality, And so, I don't know. Like, again, it depends on what you want to use Bitcoin for. If you just want to use it for saving, I would recommend get as much non-KYC Bitcoin as you can. Right, but if you want to participate in society using Bitcoin, like, it's going to be really hard to do so with non-KYC for, again, big purchases and whatnot. And so,
well, there's the other thing too. I think we spoke about this the other day. It's really hard to get, that I'm aware of, like, no KYC if you want to do a larger amount. Like, say I wanted to buy $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 worth, or a whole Bitcoin. Where the fuck do you buy that? no KYC. And I'm fucked if I've got the time to sit on RoboSats and buy them $50 Amazon cards. Like it's just I don't know where you get larger amounts from.
That's kind of, at least currently in the current ecosystem, that's kind of the trade-off. You got to be willing to, I guess, acquire slowly over time if you're going the no KYC route, because you're right. I don't really think there, as far as I'm aware, unless you're well, actually, so there have been instances where I've sold large amounts directly to directly to someone who owns an ATM, and that was like an in-person cash deal. Didn't sign any documents. We just kind of, traded and wait for a confirmation to go through. But yeah, no. And for just a random person to, be like, oh, I want to buy half a Bitcoin. I definitely will admit it's pretty hard to do that. No KYC, just, getting 0.5 or something like that.
And then when you do try and mix it on Whirlpool or whatever, like using Sparrow, I've done a bit of that. I mean, that's a long-winded, and it costs you, and again, slow. Like to mix one Bitcoin takes forever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just, at least the way that I view it is just kind of the trade-off you take for privacy.
Yeah.
That's why I think kind of the cashew could be a big deal. It's like you're the mint, and then you get to kind of like take it off the, surveillance or whatever, and you can kind of distribute it back out to where you need it to, different wallets or whatever, and within your own possession, and then just fucking put it right back into your hardware wallet at some point. Like the trail's been lost, right? Because Cashew's private.
I need to play. I honestly need to play with Cashew better, because I need to think more about the implications of mixing it, of putting your Bitcoin in through a mint and then putting it back on Lightning, and depending on how you have your Lightning set up. Arguably, like the one pothole I could see is that if you're running your own Lightning node and hosting your own mint, and depending on where that server is hosted, you can argue, someone can arguably, say like, oh, someone in, Colorado is hosting a node and a mint, and they just got a bunch of sats off of a transaction, and it's, attached to this IP address. And I don't know. I need to think of the chain of.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I need to think through that a little bit more.
Back in the day, I bought a burner phone, met someone on local Bitcoins. Thank God they weren't like a government agent or whatever. And I just bring fucking 10 grand in cash to fucking a Starbucks parking lot and use the Starbucks Wi-Fi to transfer the Bitcoin straight cash. That's how I got my KYC.
Yeah. I miss local Bitcoins, but it was sketchy as hell to deal with.
Right. You didn't know if you're going to get killed or whatnot, but it's like, that's why we always met in a Starbucks parking lot. Because I'm like, if you're going to kill me, you're going to kill me in the middle of the day in broad daylight amongst other people that are walking around the Starbucks, or rob me or whatever,
I always limited my transactions to like 0.1 or something like that at the very most. And then of course, you're always meeting in a public place, like a coffee shop or a bar or something.
And I'd converse over Signal too, so that, I had like every box checked on this shit. And I'd converse over Signal so that, they couldn't track the communication of even the transaction.
And so what are you doing to manage your UTXOs, Fiend, with your KYC and your non-KYC? How do you manage that?
Well, it's been sitting there forever, so it's just all sitting. I'm not really managing it. It's just sitting there. I haven't touched it and haven't moved it, so it's just sitting on a hardware wallet. Did I lose you guys, or?
No. Hey, I have a question for Bobo, because I'm sitting here with my son, and he's curious about kangaroos. He was scared of kangaroos because he saw a video. What did you see? A video of somebody getting attacked by a kangaroo or something?
Someone's dog getting attacked.
Oh, someone's dog getting attacked by a kangaroo. Oh, it's the video. The guy goes and punches him in the face, the kangaroo in the face. So I said I'd ask my Australian friend if kangaroos are that prominent and dangerous out in the wild.
Some kangaroos look really swole. I would not want to get into a fight with one.
I might have stepped away. But yeah, we're watching videos of a guy punching a kangaroo in the face.
Back for revenge.
He's back for revenge.
Banging over and out.
Yeah. But hey, I gotta head out, guys. So I'm gonna jump off. I gotta go cut some grass and do some family stuff. But be back on later on. So
Right on, man.
I'll catch up with you guys later.
Good hanging.
Right,
Talk to you.
right on, Seth. Good to see you, Seth.
All right.
Seth.
Later, man.
Well, Bevo, you didn't answer him about the kangaroo, man. I'm just honorary. I can't answer that. Yeah, I've got a train going past nearby, and he was fucking tooting his horn and shit. So I didn't actually hear his question. So he was asking if kangaroos were really aggressive and prominent out in the wild. So his son was scared of them. Yeah, they're prominent, but typically, they'll hop away. But if you cornered one, they'll defend themselves like any wild animal, and they'll make a mess of you for sure. What they do is they hop up towards you and use their back legs, their claws on their feet, and they'll try and they'll gouge at you, so they could rip your stomach out.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they're fucking strong, man. That those hind legs and the muscles, they're so much power, eh? So yeah, you don't want to corner one, and but typically that's probably only the junky old males. Smaller ones and whatever, they're quite placid. And if they've been, you can make them friendly. Like if you get them from when they're a joey and you keep it at your house and whatever, they grow up just to be like a pet. So, they're not all bad. But out in the wild, yeah, they're still wild animals, eh? I was sitting there thinking about it as I was talking to you about it. My brother-in-law actually had a pet kangaroo from a baby. I don't remember how long he kept it, and how big it actually got, but he actually had one time. I had a crazy brother-in-law that loved animals. He had camels and all kind of wild and exotic things at one point in his life. What about these mad fuckers in Texas, man, that got white tigers and all that kind of shit? It's like, really? Yeah, but he didn't ever have a tiger. He did have. He had a mean ass monkey one time. Had a macaque that would.
Hey, those crazy ass motherfuckers got me through the beginning of the pandemic when we all got locked down. Let me tell you. That was some great hillbilly viewing, that fucking Tiger King.
Oh yeah, I love that show. That was great. What a peanut.
It was like it was perfectly released considering the times, right? Like we had all this mass hysteria. Obviously, it turned out to be clown fucking world. Everyone was locked down or whatever, and then all of a sudden, we get fucking Joe Dirt or whatever his name is, all on our TV screens and just becoming some national sensation over fucking tiger cages in Oklahoma or some shit.
Is he in fucking jail or something now?
Yeah.
He should be. Fuck.
Oh man, it was like the perfect embodiment of what we went through. Was just the fact that show gained national interest during that time period. Just perfect.
That fucker's in jail, but Sam Bankman-Fried gets to sit in their fucking dad's house pulling his dick watching porn on his laptop. What a fucking joke.
Yeah, he gets to play as League of Legends or whatever he's into. I mean, I am interested to see what happens here because it just seems like they're just going to spend all this time kind of delaying everything so that they can just slap down the little light sentence that they're going to inevitably give him. This is just my theory, at least. And then the media is going to kind of fluff him up a little bit, and he's just going to kind of get away with a slap on the wrist or maybe some short, ceremonial jail sentence or whatever.
He's
go away for the rest of his life.
Is there some people out there that are nervous, and when they get the first chance, he's fucking gone?
I mean, I can imagine. If you lost $5 million and you were maybe part of some shady cartel organization or something like that had their money on FTX, like you know what I mean. I'm sure a lot of people who you shouldn't be fucking with got fucked with by him at FTX.
Yeah,
Right?
I think he's going to be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life. Eh?
Maybe. I mean, he might go into witness protection or something to kind of hide him. So, I mean, I would imagine that would be probably the smart thing to do if he gets off with a light sentence. But
How,
the guy should be going to jail the rest of his life.
how the fuck do you
Good.
hide that guy in witness protection, man? Fucking hell. He looks like Bozo the Clown, yeah? With his fucking hair and
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
A lot of plastic surgery.
He should go to fucking jail for a long time is what should happen, but whether or not he does, who knows?
I mean, yeah, you know that it's one of those things, like if he gets put in jail for the rest of his life, then maybe you know that this wasn't just some kind of intelligence psyop that went on. But if he gets off with some kind of light sentence, a few months or whatever, then you know for sure that the government and the intelligence agent communities were behind propping that guy up and his exchange.
Well, how many times did he meet with Gensler? Like it was a lot, yeah?
Right. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, he kind of that was the whole kind of the ploy, right? Was to first of all make paper Bitcoin. Second of all, try to gain public, trust or whatever, or public, love from people by being some kind of like using virtue signaling to kind of make like he's some philanthropist or something like that doesn't care about money and is all about, donating all his money back. And then you had like the whole vegan side of him and stuff like that catered to a lot of the people, at least on the left in the Democratic base, that he was trying to cater to. And then he tried to use that kind of persona that he built to try to regulate the shit out of the crypto industry through, wheeling and dealing, or so-called wheeling and dealing with politicians. But if he was always in the back pocket of the politicians to begin with, he really didn't have to pay to play, right? It was just kind of like all for show, right? And so I think the whole ploy was to kind of try to hurt Bitcoin during the last bull run by printing out shitloads of paper Bitcoin by running this nefarious scam. And then also just using his propping up and his influence to try to continue to further regulate Bitcoin and crypto in the favor of the banks, the centralized actors, and some of the WEF puppets that are propping up our government right now. And so if that theory is true, then we should see him get off with a light sentence, at least a light sentence, like kind of a slap in the wrist sentence. Now, if I'm wrong, then he should go to jail for the rest of his life. So we'll see how it plays out. But right now you're seeing, like you said, you're seeing him at home with his parents playing his League of Legends video games and whatnot, kind of waiting until I think the trail starts, or at least they're scheduled for October or November this year. So we'll see. It's all kind of like, when you kind of start to add things together, it just really smells sketchy. But ultimately we'll have to see how it all plays out.
I don't think you have to be a Rhodes Scholar to work out that he's going to get off with a light sentence, man. He's fucking into it up to his neck.
Yeah, I think this the second he got arrested and kind of got propped up by the mainstream corporate media and kind of got defended on by the New York Post, New York Times of the world and whatnot, I think was kind of an indication that he was somewhat tied into the intelligence community, because that's just kind of what they do to try to get people to sway their assessment and judgment of people, that they try to prop up in these games that they're playing. So.
And just the fact that the Bahamian government was going to keep him there and he was going to serve his time there, then all of a sudden the US stepped in and then all of a sudden he's gone. Like,
Right. All these things just kind of, we're sniffing the right things here, right? I kind of had that May before he got kind of called out by CZ and kind of run his exchange into the ground and exposed for the fraud that it was. I thought he was a spook back then, even in May, and I think the exchange folded in like September or August or something like that. So I had already kind of had an idea for a couple of months that he was some kind of intelligence asset. So, but that's just my thesis. Who knows? I'm not directly involved. I can just only gather the information that's presented to me and make my own decision. And so we'll see. Anywho, Bevo, you're in for tomorrow tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, so that'll be 6 for me. Yeah,
You're in
I'm
Central,
sitting.
right? Missouri.
Yeah.
Yeah, Central 6 is 6 for both of us. We can just, but yeah, we broadcast it out as being 7 p.m. Eastern time, which will be 6
Okay.
p.m. our time.
What are we talking about?
I don't know, man. Think of some stuff, and we'll come to the table with it. We might rehash a lot of what we talked about today, or whatever kind of is going on. I never show up to these things with a plan, unless we have a special guest or whatever, and I kind of do a little bit of research on the guest and what they're working on beforehand. But if we don't have a guest, it's just kind of a free for all thought. I don't know. I just figured, since Seth won't be around, it'd be nice to have a co-host to kind of help drive things with me. I don't really want to drive this whole thing on my own, and so that's why I reached out. So, yeah, cool. I appreciate it. I'm going to take off here. I'm going to stop this recording. We don't have to do a whole full 4-hour burner like we're usually doing.